Episode 3. Zhuangzhu examined how the two had been acting and snuck his way into the conversation. Who's Sheng Wenyang to you, Anan? Mobei decided not to wait for Chen Xinan's reply and answered for him in an ironic tone. She said she was your woman. Zhuangzhu was stupefied. When did Chen Xinan get a woman? Mobei waited patiently for Chen Xinan to clarify. Chen Xinan could tell from the glint in his eyes. Without even lifting his head, Chen Xinan leisurely placed another tile and said, If you know her so well, why don't you find out for yourself? Mobei held back his initial reaction and only glared at Chen Xinan. He had felt an attraction to Sheng Wenyang at first sight. He spent all his time trying to get closer to her. He helped and provided everything that he could for her. But when he confessed, she was merciless. Thank you for telling me, she said, but my heart lies with someone else. At the time, Mobei thought she was only using it as an excuse. That's impossible, he exclaimed. How is it not possible? Sheng Wenyang had firmly replied, If you already like someone else, how come I've never seen you talking with someone like that at all? You've never even mentioned him. I didn't mention him because I'm afraid I'll turn weak just thinking of him, afraid that my heart will soften and I'll go back to China to find him. And I've never contacted him for the same reason. If I don't hear his voice, I won't think about him as much, said Sheng Wenyang. Mobei was thoroughly hurt by her confession. He wasn't expecting her to continue. You know him too. Who? Chen Xinan. Mobei gave a bittersweet smile. Why are you so sure that I know him? You're from Shengjin City, and everyone there knows of him. Mobei, the man I love can control the forces of nature. You can't possibly compare. I never thought about giving him up, and in fact, I even went abroad for him. Nothing is worse than an attack right after a rejection, but Mobei still kept his smile. Are you sure that Chen Xinan loves you? According to what I know, he was never into women. I'm his girlfriend. What do you have to say to that? Mobei's heart shattered into thousands of pieces. He wanted to call Chen Xinan for proof, but was too scared to hear the truth. He wanted to forget about Sheng Wenyang, but she still acted like everything was business as usual. He remembered her saying, Mobei, even though we can't be lovers, I still hope that we can be best friends. He was screaming inside, frustrated at how useless he felt. Why couldn't he give up on a woman that would never return his love? Why couldn't he just let go? Her every movement, her every expression, each minute detail about her was intoxicating. Sheng Wenyang, I'll always love you. Author's words. Theater Chuhu woke up on the wrong side of the bed. The two have just been married, and Xin Haoyue doesn't know Chen Xinan has a problem with waking up on the wrong side of the bed. One morning, due to certain happenings the night before, the two of them only got a bit of sleep before a call on Xin Haoyue's phone woke them up. The host of the station originally had a show that morning, but ran into a small emergency and called Xin Haoyue for assistance. After they talked on the phone for a while, she turned and realized that Chen Xinan was also awake and staring at her, annoyed. Xin Haoyue ignored him, and even after showering, he was still sitting in bed. He was entirely displeased and entirely silent. She looked at the time and saw that at only 6:30. It was kind of early. Xin Haoyue felt guilty for his morning grumpiness, so she walked over to him and said, Sorry for waking you up. I'll make sure to put my phone on silent next time. Chen Xinan was not swayed. Then, Xin Haoyue shifted her gaze. She didn't care that all she had on was a towel. She lifted her leg, straddling his thigh as she leaned in for a kiss. Chen Xinan flinched, but continued to stay silent. Xin Haoyue kissed him again. And just as she was about to leave, she was forced back onto the bed. Somehow she showed up to work entirely late, despite waking up so early. Later on, she found out that these morning activities were actually a habit of his, and she didn't bother to care for him, even if she woke him up. He'd surely get over it. After failing to get what he wanted, Chen Xinan was confused. How come she isn't falling for my honey trap anymore? I'm depressed. What should I do? Waiting for an answer online. Emergency. On their way back, Zhuangzhu insisted that he wanted to ride Mobei's car. Mobei tried to refuse, but he wasn't as shameless as Zhuangzhu. When Mobei heard Zhuangzhu's teasing, he ignored him. Zhuangzhu folded his hands behind his head and raised his two long legs. He lazily said, I'm not criticizing you, but stealing a brother's woman really shows that you have no taste. Although whoever is more capable, the woman should be his. But there are so many women in this world. Women are like clothes, so why would you break off a decade of brotherhood for a woman? Mobei said, I'm not like you. You play with women like you're changing clothes. But the woman I like is different from all the women you know. Zhuangzhu was amused by his serious tone. It seems that beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Mobei glared at him, hinting that he should restrain himself before he becomes impolite. Zhuangzhu raised his hands in surrender. Damn, I can't even say anything. Mobei heavily sighed. It seemed like he was still frustrated. Zhuangzhu understood that Mobei was someone who would easily fall in love. However, when he actually falls in love, he would lose control. In the past, Mobei was madly enamored with his first love. But no one expected that his first love would make him wear a green hat. Because of that, the Mo elders didn't even need to stop the relationship from progressing anymore. Mobei immediately broke up with her. Since then, he has lived an innocent life. Now he finally found someone he loved, and it turned out that the woman belongs to Chen Xinan. It's not surprising that it was hard for him to accept that. Brother, since that woman had said that she is Chen Xinan's woman, why are you torturing yourself about it? There are plenty of fish in the sea, don't hurt yourself over one woman. Mobei said. Are you Chen Xinan's agent? Why are you helping him? Hey, I'm saying this for your sake. How can you bite the hand that's helping you? Then it seems that I have eyes but have failed to recognize Mount Tai. Zhuangzi felt like it was hard to talk with Mobei. Since we're brothers, I've already tried to convince you. If something happens in the future, don't blame me for not stopping you from jumping into the fire pit. Mobei didn't appreciate his kindness. Then why don't you go convince Chen Xinan? He laughed lightly. What? I bet you don't dare to. Zhuangzi cried out in grievance. Of course I want to persuade him. But he is really hard to read. He either deliberately avoids my questions or answers in an ambiguous way. Who would know whether he is acknowledging something or not? Do you think you can read him? Mobei's expression darkened. It was precisely because he couldn't read Chen Xinan that he was suspicious. When Zhuangzi saw his expression, he heartily laughed. Haha, do you see now? It seems like I'm not the only one. Who could know what Chen Xinan is thinking about? In fact, Chen Xinan was currently thinking about Xin Haoyue. He and Xin Haoyue had a great Cold War in a city. The reason for the Cold War was precisely Sheng Wenyang. When he heard Mobei mention Sheng Wenyang, he suddenly had a thought. If Xin Haoyue had really lost her memory, then her previous memory regarding him and Sheng Wenyang's love affair should have been forgotten. Now that she always has Sheng Wenyang's name on the tip of her tongue, it should be because of Ji Yi and Mao Xiuan telling tales and making mischiefs. The more he thought about it, the more his chest tightened in pain. The more he thought about it, the more his chest tightened in pain. Since Chen Xinan wasn't happy, the main culprit shouldn't have it easy either. He should give Mao Xiuan a heavier workload, then he can vent his anger. As for Ji Yi, he sent a text message to Dean Zhao. Chen Xinan suggested that Dean Zhao should teach more lectures and set up more activities to train his juniors. Dean Zhao thought that his suggestion was pretty good, so he asked what kind of lectures and activities he should arrange. Chen Xinan moved his fingers and sent a series of questions Dean Zhao should focus on during his lectures. He even helped him draft a guest list. After Dean Zhao looked through it, he felt that everything was perfect. He contacted Ji Yi and asked the students to begin preparing. Ji Yi was busy preparing for the final exams. He was dumbstruck when he received the notification from Dean Zhao. Does Dean Zhao want to delay their holiday? In fact, Ji Yi was really naive and pure. After attending one activity after another, Ji Yi was as busy as a spinning top. When the dean finally stopped setting up activities, the holiday was already over. The entire student union was exhausted from all the events. However, no one was more exhausted as Ji Yi. After receiving so many suggestions from Chen Xinan for no reason, Dean Zhao thought that Chen Xinan was helping him so that Chen Xinan can benefit from it. As a result, he generously sent the only invitation he had received to Chen Xinan early the next morning. Dean Zhao had also told the person delivering the invitation to leave Chen Xinan this message. This is the only invitation I have. The dean has already promised the principal of a college that he will send someone to attend. Because of the current relationship between the two schools, Chen Xinan, you have to attend. When Chen Xinan finished attending a meeting, he returned to his office. Upon entering, he saw a golden invitation with the words, "A college," printed on it. A light flashed in his eye, and he asked, "Where did this come from?" Assistant Wang Dongwen had been following Chen Xinan around the meeting, so he was naturally unaware of the answer. As a result, he immediately turned around and said, "I will go investigate this." Because he is Chen Xinan's only assistant, his workload was quite heavy. Fortunately, there are many secretaries working under Assistant Wang. Even though the secretaries also assist Chen Xinan, because Chen Xinan doesn't like having too many people around him, they were considered Assistant Wang's subordinate. When Assistant Wang went downstairs to ask the secretaries, a secretary immediately reported everything to him, saying that it was Dean Zhao who had sent the invitation. He also relayed the message, saying, "The person who had sent the invitation told me that Dean Zhao had already discussed this matter with President Chen yesterday. He also told me that President Chen agreed to it, so I acted on my own initiative and accepted the invitation." Assistant Wang should have known about the origin of the invitation. In the past, he had never seen his boss having such a big reaction to just an invitation. This must be because Miss Xin is still in a city. Although Assistant Wang didn't know what had happened between the two in a city, he knew that this woman wasn't ordinary. This woman actually caused his boss to help her find the best doctor in the middle of the night, carry her to his car, and transfer hospitals. His biggest impression of Miss Xin was from waiting in line forever to buy her porridge. What's more, he had to deliver the porridge under Mrs. Chen's name. No matter how he thought about it, the relationship between Miss Xin and his boss was very complicated. Assistant Wang thought about before, and began praying his boss wouldn't go to a city. He still remembered how his expression was gloomy non-stop for over 2 days. When he finally came back to his office, the pressure around him was too frightening. Assistant Wang felt that whenever his boss gets close to Miss Xin, the aura he gave off would be frightening. In the end, Assistant Wang himself will be the one to suffer. However, no matter how unwilling he was to suffer again, Assistant Wang relayed the message word by word to Chen Xinan. Chen Xinan sat on the swivel chair. He was holding his phone in one hand while flipping through the invitation with his other hand. Chen Xinan silently listened to Assistant Wang's report. Assistant Wang looked at Chen Xinan. He tried to guess his boss's feelings. Would he go or not? If his boss wants to go, then he will have to work hard to rearrange the important workload for his boss. Chen Xinan continued to stare at the invitation in his hand. He waved to tell his assistant to leave. Chen Xinan didn't confirm whether or not he would be attending. When Chen Xinan entered his office the next morning, he took off his suit jacket and said, "Book me a ticket to a city." When Chen Xinan entered his office the next morning, he took off his suit jacket and said, "Book me a ticket to a city." Assistant Wang almost knelt down on the floor. "Boss, please don't play like this." What's more, he didn't know when and where in a city the ceremony, for the completed construction of a school building, would be scheduled. Assistant Wang tried his best to appear like he wasn't about to fall apart. He calmed himself and asked, "President Chen, when will the ceremony start for a college?" "It will start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon." Assistant Wang said, "I will book the flights immediately. It will take 2 hours by plane to travel from Shenzhen to a city." He also had to schedule some time for Chen Xinan to have lunch after getting off the plane. Therefore, Assistant Wang rushed to prepare everything and arrived at the airport at 9:30 in the morning with Chen Xinan. He will have to reschedule Chen Xinan's meeting with various executives and the collaborations with other companies. After Assistant Wang got on the plane, he looked at the boundless blue sky and felt his heart was a little tired. In the past, when his boss attended these opening ceremonies... his boss had never attended this type of boring ceremony. He would never attend an opening ceremony in a city when the school didn't even have a strong relationship with him. The event will officially end after the dinner party concluded. Under normal circumstances, his boss would most likely leave after the opening ceremony. But because Miss Xin was here, it was hard for Assistant Wang to make the decision. Therefore, he forced himself to work up the courage to ask Chen Xinan. But right after he asked the question, he secretly scolded himself for being stupid. It doesn't matter whether or not Chen Xinan wanted to stay in a hotel. He could have just booked a room. And if Chen Xinan didn't want to stay, he could just cancel it on President Chen's behalf. It was better than asking his boss such a worthless question. Chen Xinan didn't directly respond, and just glanced at Assistant Wang. Assistant Wang felt that something was wrong, so he said, "President Chen, I apologize." Chen Xinan waved his hand. When he started walking, he said, "Book a room." Assistant Wang was shocked. He wiped the sweat off his forehead. He took out his phone and called the secretary to book a room at a hotel. During lunch, Assistant Wang could see that Chen Xinan was absent-minded. Although he had seen through his boss, it didn't mean that he could say it out loud. It was getting late after eating. After the meal, Assistant Wang sent Chen Xinan to the hotel so he could wash up. Then, they went to college. When they arrived at a college, Assistant Wang reported their names. He looked up and saw that the schoolgirls in charge of welcoming guests looked astonished, their gaze enthusiastic as they stared at Chen Xinan. Chen Xinan had combed back the loose strands of his hair that were usually on his forehead. This exposed his full forehead, making his facial features appear to look even more refined. When it was coupled with his handsome face and soul-sucking eyes, even if he was dressed in simple black pants and a white shirt, it couldn't conceal his noble aura. His boss had always been very charming. It was very obvious, as the ladies had all turned their heads to have a better look at him. When Assistant Wang saw that the girl still hadn't returned to her senses and that his boss was getting more impatient, he said, "May I ask which way is the opening ceremony is at?" "Oh, please wait for a moment. I will ask another classmate to take you there." When she said that, she apologetically nodded at Chen Xinan. Assistant Wang didn't even need to look to know his boss didn't respond to her at all. However, in the next second, the classmate shouted, "Haoyue, you're heading to the new lab building, right? Why don't you help President Chen lead the way? After all, he came here to represent your school." When Xin Haoyue was suddenly stopped by Gu Tong to lead the way for Chen Xinan, she inexplicably became frozen. She looked in the direction that Gu Tong was pointing at, and the handsome white figure could be no one else but Chen Xinan. Xin Haoyue's first thought, upon suddenly saw Chen Xinan after a long time was, the evil spirit has continued to linger on. Why does she still see him even after she came to a city? Xin Haoyue was trying to ignore Chen Xinan's scorching look as she pulled Gu Tong to the side. With her back to Chen Xinan, she said quietly, "Hey, why did you bother me for this?" Gu Tong didn't understand. Even though she had heard of the big shot Chen Xinan, why did Haoyue appear to be avoiding him like the plague? Gu Tong examined her and asked in confusion, "Didn't you guys go to the same school? I thought it would be best for you to show him around." Xin Haoyue shook her head. "I'm not acquainted with him. You take him." "What about my job here?" Gu Tong said bewildered. Xin Haoyue said without thinking, "I'll help you." But aren't you going over there to help too? There should be enough time. Come back right after you show him the way, and I'll rush over. Gutong didn't understand why Xin Haoyue would rather go through such a complicated process, adding more work to both of them, instead of bringing Chen Xinan over. But she thought she had already troubled Xin Haoyue by making her help greet the guests, so she didn't want to reject her feelings. Then she turned and grinned sweetly. With an apologetic tone she said, Mr. Chen, I'm sorry, let me escort you. Chen Xinan didn't look at her. His gaze was on Xin Haoyue's graceful back. She was wearing the same outfit as the girl in front of him, a red knee-length cheongsam, a Chinese-style dress. It fit her body tightly, showing off her beautiful curves and graceful figure. The side slit was quite high, but far from his view. Her long and snowy thighs were intermittently visible. Chen Xinan's gaze deepened. As he lifted his chin, he said, I only want her to show me the way. Gutong was stupefied. What? Xin Haoyue was also stupefied when she heard that. That fuck, nitpicking. Gutong really didn't know what to do. She looked at Chen Xinan, who was only staring at Xin Haoyue. Then she glanced at Xin Haoyue, who was being stubborn and refusing to turn around. In the end, she could only look towards Assistant Wang for help. Assistant Wang was good at handling these situations, so he said to Xin Haoyue politely, Sorry to bother Miss Xin to lead the way. Thank you. Xin Haoyue gritted her teeth. Anyone who wants to go can go. She's not going. Chen Xinan could stay here if he wanted to. Xin Haoyue turned and was going to tell Gutong off, but after seeing Assistant Wang's appearance more clearly, she pointed at him and stuttered. Weren't you the person who brought me the porridge? Xin Haoyue looked at Assistant Wang. Assistant Wang looked at Chen Xinan and was a little speechless. Yes, boss, we have been exposed. Following Assistant Wang's line of sight, Xin Haoyue also looked at Chen Xinan. She can't help but ask, Isn't this your mom's assistant? Why is he with you? He's my assistant. Chen Xinan continued. Why? Do you have any issues with that? Xin Haoyue gritted her teeth and glared at him. Yes, if Assistant Wang was his assistant, then why did he bring her breakfast? Also, why did he claim he was Wang Yinlin's assistant? What the hell was he doing? Seeing Xin Haoyue getting angry, Chen Xinan finally felt more comfortable. He said kindly, What are you dissatisfied with? Say it. Xin Haoyue said bluntly, I am very dissatisfied. Chen Xinan, what do you mean by this? He's your assistant, so why did you lie to me that he was your mom's assistant? If I didn't lie, would you have eaten it? Xin Haoyue swallowed her words. She could guess, without really thinking, that she most likely wouldn't have eaten the porridge if she knew it was him that had sent it. She just doesn't want any kind of unexplainable relationship with Chen Xinan. They have no relationship with each other. So why would he have other people deliver food to her? This makes it easier for others to misunderstand. Xin Haoyue thought, if it were another girl, she would probably have misunderstood and thought he has feelings towards her. But Xin Haoyue proudly and calmly gave herself an internal thumbs up. Luckily, she knew how the story would progress. She would be eliminated if she had any intentions towards Chen Xinan since she wasn't the female lead. Chen Xinan's deep gaze never left Xin Haoyue for a moment. After seeing her reaction, he said confidently, I knew it. Xin Haoyue gritted her teeth. Then thank you for your previous kindness. But I don't feel your gratitude at all. He continued lazily, Is this the way that Miss Xin expresses her gratitude to others? It doesn't sound sincere in the least. Xin Haoyue immediately looked at him defensively. Then what do you want? Lead the way, Chen Xinan said briefly. Isn't it the same if someone else guides you? I don't know anyone else, I only know you. Xin Haoyue thought that he was unreasonable. It's only being a guide, does it matter who takes you there? Yes, I'm not used to having a female stranger by my side. Hey, Xin Haoyue looked at him contemptuously. Why weren't you bothered when there were so many women around you in the mall? Chen Xinan smiled. I was just there to join in on the fun. How can you take that seriously? Xin Haoyue was pissed off by his frivolous attitude. She was sure that he did it on purpose. She tolerated him and asked, If I guide you, does it offset the favor from last time? Chen Xinan gave her a look saying, You're so innocent. Then, responded passively, You can ask Assistant Wang how troublesome it was for him to get you that porridge. If you think his hard work is only worth this much, then I think he's quite pitiful. Standing on the side, Assistant Wang beamed at his boss. In his eyes, Chen Xinan looked so manly at this time. He had never known his boss was this sweet. Not once has Assistant Wang complained to his boss about any matter. So how was Chen Xinan able to understand him so well? Even recognizing his hard work, Assistant Wang admired his boss and was thankful. The CEO was actually a person who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. When Xin Haoyue saw the expression in Assistant Wang's eyes, she was left speechless. She can't really say that he doesn't work hard enough. Feeling reluctant, Xin Haoyue gave up and said, I can bring you over. But once you are there, you cannot ask me for anything anymore. You can't pretend to be close to me. Chen Xinan had some issues with her words. We are close. Xin Haoyue was about to turn and tell Gutong, but after hearing that, she refuted him directly and without hesitation. Close your ass. On the other side, Chen Xinan's face became like Bao Qingtian after he saw that she didn't take him seriously. This was the first time that Assistant Wang had witnessed his boss being contradicted and not yelling back. He tried his best to hold back his laughter. Gutong heard their conversation from the start. The back and forth between Xin Haoyue and Chen Xinan's conversation was shocking. How was Haoyue not close with Chen Xinan? With this pace, they are clearly too close. Gutong, I'll bring them over first and I'll see you there. Gutong still hadn't recovered from the shock. She grabbed Xin Haoyue's hand quickly as she was about to leave. Think about how you're going to confess everything to us tonight, after this is finished. Confess what? Xin Haoyue was confused. The relationship between you and Chen Xinan. Xin Haoyue didn't think it was necessary to wait until tonight. She can clarify this with just one sentence. They have no relationship. Gutong seemed to know what she was about to say, so she cut her off. Don't respond now, and don't think about fooling me. Just wait for us to serve you with cruel punishment tonight. While being pushed by Gutong to leave, Xin Haoyue was still puzzled. She really wasn't trying to fool anyone, so what do they want her to say? While leading the way, Xin Haoyue was deep in thought, so she didn't say a word. Of course, the most important reason for her silence was that she didn't want to talk to Chen Xinan. But Chen Xinan wanted to talk with her. Although he could see her walk quickly ahead without looking back, he couldn't help but glance at her back a couple of times. When he couldn't take it anymore, Chen Xinan finally lengthened his stride to walk up to her side. Assistant Wang saw the whole thing from the back, his eyes widening from shock. Then, he purposely put a little distance between the couple and himself. He had to pretend that he didn't see the boss's embarrassing moment. Xin Haoyue noticed something unusual. After walking a few steps, she looked at Chen Xinan out of the side of her eye and frowned. What are you doing? Chen Xinan countered. How are you going to answer your classmate's question? What question? Xin Haoyue said without a care. Chen Xinan's gaze deepened as he looked at her. Xin Haoyue vaguely thought it might be that question concerning him, but that question doesn't even need any brain cells. She answered without thinking. I will tell the truth. You don't have to worry. This is not Shenzhen City. I'm not dumb enough to tie myself to you. Oh yeah, you also don't have to worry. I won't destroy your innocence. Upon hearing her words, Chen Xinan stopped and sneered. Xin Haoyue, do you know how you will meet your end? Hearing him, Xin Haoyue stopped and turned back to look at him in terror. Chen Xinan felt his emotions finally settle down, so he continued walking. While walking, he said, because of your obliviousness. Xin Haoyue rolled her eyes. She really wants to grab a brick and throw it on his head. Humph. Why are you so proud of yourself? I must tolerate him. Xin Haoyue told herself to bear with it. She just needed to bring him to the lab building, and then make a quick getaway. When they arrived at their destination, the principal came out to welcome Chen Xinan. When Xin Haoyue saw Chen Xinan being surrounded by everyone, she withdrew quickly while they were all clustered around him. She looked back at Chen Xinan cautiously during her escape, and thought, he's indeed the male lead. He always has the halo effect surrounding him. The author had to be his biological mother. While Xin Haoyue was looking back, she wasn't paying attention to the path and almost hit the person in front of her. Good thing that this time she didn't throw herself onto someone's chest. Xiaoqiao reacted quickly, holding on to her shoulder and moved her gently a little distance away. Xin Haoyue, realizing that she almost hit him again, apologized immediately. I forgot to pay attention to the path. Yeah, I know, Xiaoqiao said, smiling. This wasn't the first time. Xin Haoyue felt awkward. The corners of her mouth curved into an apologetic smile. Then she changed the topic and asked, is it starting? Wait for about 10 more minutes. Okay. The two of them had already met in the library. After that encounter, they saw each other a few more times afterward. Xiaoqiao was easy to get along and fun to talk to. With all of that, the two of them gradually became closer. Xiaoqiao examined her red Chinese-style dress and praised, not bad, very pretty. Xin Haoyue responded with a smile. Thank you, I'm still not used to it yet. Is it your first time wearing it? Kind of. If you have a chance, you should wear it more often, it looks very nice. Xin Haoyue smiled. Because the two of them had to do things afterward, they separated after talking for a bit. While searching for Xin Haoyue's figure in the crowd, Chen Xinan saw Xin Haoyue talking sweetly to Xiaoqiao. He immediately narrowed his eyes. She had never shown him such a pure and sweet smile. The whole time Chen Xinan couldn't keep his eyes off the host, who was gracefully presenting on a college's glorious history and the significance of the newly built experimental building. He was so moved that he turned around to the leaders and said, Your esteemed school is home to quite the talent, though he was mainly commending Xiaoqiao. Xin Haoyue was that close with such a polite and attractive young man? Each guest attending the event was distinguished in one way or another, so Xiaoqiao specifically had been asked to host. He didn't disappoint. The leaders were proud but dared not show it. Why, President Chen, your school fosters much more talent than ours. Chen Xinan decided not to exchange any more pleasantries. Instead, his gaze landed on Xin Haoyue, who was bustling about on the right side of the hall. He couldn't understand why she was willing to do such menial tasks. It seemed like she was quite happy doing her work. Her face flushed as she smiled. While Chen Xinan knitted his eyebrows, the ceremony came to a satisfactory close. Moving on to a tour of the new building. Chen Xinan was initially not interested, but reluctantly joined when he saw Xin Haoyue in the back of the line. Opposed to Xiao's systematic and detailed presentation of the complex, Chen Xinan surveyed the building with a glance. He noted how ordinary it was before seeing even half of the structure. Chen Xinan didn't have the patience to waste time with people he found boring, so he began to slow down and settle to the back of the line. Assistant Wang knew very well that Chen Xinan had slowed on purpose and followed suit, despite his doubts. When he noticed that Xin Haoyue was also in the back, he suddenly understood what his boss was playing at. Xin Haoyue noticed Chen Xinan and could only stare in alarm. As the tour reached a turn in the corridor, he quickly grabbed her wrist, pulling her away from everyone else. Xin Haoyue wanted to scream, but Chen Xinan covered her mouth before she could. If you want everyone to know about us, yell as much as you like, he hissed. Xin Haoyue was angry. Who'd want to be seen with him? Shh, go. I can let go, but you have to do as I say and come with me. Oof. Go where? You'll know when we get there. Xin Haoyue was reluctant. Chen Xinan suddenly laughed. It's fine if you don't want to go with me. I'll ask your principal for permission instead. At least he will give me some respect. If she really let him do that, Xin Haoyue believed it would be pointless to stay in a college anymore. She quickly nodded her head. Seeing that, Chen Xinan loosened his grip in satisfaction and led her by the hand all the way to the parking lot. Assistant Wang was now certain that Miss Xin would be the boss's wife. He respectfully opened the back door for them, and out of respect for their privacy, raised the partition between the front and back of the car. Xin Haoyue urged Chen Xinan to loosen his grip. Hey, you've been grabbing my hand the entire time? Why aren't you letting go? Didn't he see how red her hand was? Chen Xinan let go, unwillingly. He didn't know what to say when he saw her wrist was so uncomfortably red. Why, when he didn't use much strength, was it like that? Xin Haoyue couldn't care less about him. She decided to focus on the ride, but when she raised her head, only saw the partition instead of scenery. She couldn't help but worry. Why is there a partition? Chen Xinan took one last passing glance at her and decided not to comment. He closed his eyes to rest. What type of act is this? Xin Haoyue whispered to herself as Chen Xinan decided to doze off in front of her. The back of the car was cramped, and Chen Xinan had good ears. When he heard her comment, he reached over to pull her towards him. Xin Haoyue had been shifting away at the moment, and she wasn't expecting him to suddenly move too. Somehow, she ended up stiffly throwing herself into him. As Xin Haoyue landed on his solid chest, all she could think about was hitting him. But Chen Xinan was quicker and held her wrist in one hand, laying the other firmly on the back of her head. She was trapped in his embrace. Xin Haoyue couldn't see his expression, so she wasn't sure what would be the best attitude or tone to take. She was in his arms, struggling to get out. Chen Xinan tightened his grip, ensuring she could only move her long, slender legs. After floundering for one too many moments, she heard Chen Xinan say in a hoarse voice, If you keep resisting, I won't be as forgiving to any trouble you cause this time. If you keep resisting, I won't be as forgiving to any trouble you cause this time. Chen Xinan's eyes landed on her long white legs as he continued to blatantly examine her body. In a relaxed tone, he replied, Whether I do or don't see. Aren't you afraid of what will happen to your image when you say stuff like that? Xin Haoyue threatened, wanting to slap his stupid face even more. Chen Xinan grabbed her hand and smiled. You can't even control hands. It'd be better if I tied them up. Don't you dare. Xin Haoyue increasingly felt like prey as her instinct to flee rose. She was a sheep waiting to be slaughtered. He caught both of her hands and even went so far as to seize control of her legs too. She couldn't escape even if she wanted to. Chen Xinan, I'm warning you, let go of me. I can let go, but you need to answer a question first. Why do you have so many questions? Chen Xinan did in fact have a lot of questions. He looked intensely at her. What's your relationship with that young man? What young man? The moment Xin Haoyue asked, the color drained from Chen Xinan's face. If you don't say his name, how will I know who it is? Xin Haoyue asked bravely. So you're saying there are lots of attractive young men that you talk to? Xin Haoyue was utterly speechless. How do you always know? Chen Xinan pouted and quickly thought up a plan. He would eventually teach all of them a lesson. But Xiaoqiao was first on the hit list. So you're pretty close with Xiaoqiao? Yeah, I'd say so. Xin Haoyue responded nearly automatically. By the time she realized what she had said, she could see the roaring fires had been lit in Chen Xinan's eyes. He looked ready to slaughter someone. Xin Haoyue was frightened and urgently tried to explain. No, I'm not that familiar with him. I've only spoken to him a couple of times. Chen Xinan observed her, trying to weigh the truth in her plea. Xin Haoyue smiled sheepishly. I'm honestly not close to him, seriously. Seeing her state, she had no relations with the young man. He was satisfied. Stay away from him. Oh, Xin Haoyue gave a half-hearted reply and wondered what the man in front of her was trying to pull. But it wasn't like she had agreed either. After all, it was her right to talk to whomever she damn well pleased. As Chen Xinan observed her bright eyes hinting at the whirlwind of her thoughts, he knew that Xin Haoyue was thinking of a way to go against him. He said, If you're brave enough, keep on giving him mixed signals then. Xin Haoyue laughed. Who's the one sending mixed signals here? Forget Xiaoqiao and me. Don't you see how strange the two of us are with each other? You know what they say, Men and women should keep their distance. Now let me go. Men and women should keep their distance? Didn't seem like you cared before when you were chasing after me. Don't think of fooling me. Even if I did so in the past, I still never touched you, Xin Haoyue quickly replied. You seriously believe that? Xin Haoyue could barely finish her sentence. She could feel how serious he was. So now what? You didn't lose your memory? Chen Xinan asked after a moment of earnest thought. Xin Haoyue suddenly realized that she had divulged the wrong information. She racked her brain, trying to find a justification when her train of thought was interrupted. You better explain properly. Xin Haoyue was enraged by his sharp gaze and struggled fiercely, gaining her freedom at last. She slipped to the leftmost side of the car, right by the window, gaining as much distance as she could from him. Chen Xinan's breathing became heavy, nearly furious with the way she avoided him like the plague. You never lost your memory, did you? You were probably saying it all this time to save face. Xin Haoyue lowered her head and arranged the hem of her skirt. She smiled and said, You can think whatever you'd like. I mean, it doesn't affect me in any way. But Chen Xinan, I honestly hope that we won't have many chances to sit down and talk. Chen Xinan stared at her, only to see that she met his gaze. You have someone you like, and business to attend. Why are you wasting both of our time? My wish has always been a simple one. I just want to live a quiet life. Even if it's impossible, couldn't you at least give me 2 years? Chen Xinan, I don't think we need to talk about why I came to a city again. Don't come to a city anymore, Chen Xinan. Xin Haoyue set her body full of determination. Chen Xinan looked deeply at her. And what if I still do? Xin Haoyue turned to look at him. She helplessly smiled. Then I can only bother my brother to send me to a school further from here. Chen Xinan sighed deeply and let his incomparably heavy expression sink further. When the car once again stopped at the entrance of a college, Xin Haoyue started to become confused. After making herself clear and saying what she wanted, Chen Xinan's demeanor had a hint of gloom. But what really surprised Xin Haoyue was that he immediately told his assistant to turn the car around and send her back. Xin Haoyue was puzzled. After causing all this trouble, what was he planning? She couldn't imagine what he was thinking at all. As the car came to a stop by the entrance, Chen Xinan simply observed Xin Haoyue for a while. She was sitting near the window and staring into space as if nothing had happened. He didn't even know what she was thinking. As he watched her out of the corner of his eye, he couldn't help but feel restless. What's going on? Now, you don't want to get out? He chided. Xin Haoyue replied passively. Chen Xinan did his best to control his temper, allowing only a spark in his eyes as he said sarcastically, You asked for all of this, so I hope you won't regret it later. What is there for me to regret? Xin Haoyue couldn't resist the urge to smile. You better not. Chen Xinan spoke coldly. Whether or not I stay in a city, and how long I do stay, is my choice. You have no right to interfere. You're nothing to me, Xin Haoyue. Xin Haoyue looked at him without even blinking, then flashed another faint smile. Opening the door, she replied calmly, I never wanted to be anything to you. She said it softly, but Chen Xinan still heard everything. Xin Haoyue didn't turn back to see his expression. This man has issues, she complained to herself as the car drove away. When she read the novel, her first impressions of each character was that they were all unique in their own way. But now that she was randomly involved in their world, she had come to realize that they were all much more eccentric than she ever would have expected. At first, she simply thought that the male lead was an imposing person. If she were to name her biggest problem with his character, it was probably that he was too heartless and too cruel in his approach to everything. But at that moment, Xin Haoyue thought he was extraordinary in a different sense. If she kept her distance, he'd be unhappy, so he occasionally felt the need to appear in front of her, simply to annoy her. What a pain. As she walked into her college, Xin Haoyue prayed silently. Please let him behave in a way that keeps everyone happy. He was smart, and she had made herself very clear, so he would understand. Since he was young, a seemingly infinite stream of girls had fawned over him at every step. Though he sought her out nearly a dozen times, it was likely because he was only bored he wanted to find someone to entertain him. But Xin Haoyue never thought she was special in any way, especially not in a way that would make him attracted to her. She earnestly prayed that they would never interact again. And on the way back, she prayed for Assistant Wang too. After she left, he was the one that would have to live with the storm brewing in his boss's expression. Meanwhile, Assistant Wang sarcastically thanked Miss Xin in secret. His boss was a glacier, but she somehow managed to make him even colder. How could he survive until they arrived at Chen Xinan's abode? After some consideration, he asked, Mr. Chen, shall we return to the hotel or? Chen Xinan held his temper in, and coldly said, Go back to Shengjin City. Assistant Wang was so shocked that he talked aloud without a second thought. Weren't you planning to stay in City A for a few more days? And, just as Assistant Wang was about to begin his next sentence, his mouth sealed itself at the sight of Chen Xinan's eyes. He was being given a very clear warning. My apologies, Mr. Chen. I spoke out of line, Assistant Wang hastily apologized. Chen Xinan didn't say anything, only pressing his lips together in response. Assistant Wang didn't dare speak anymore, but he was still curious. How could Mr. Chen simply leave? Was he going to forget Miss Xin? Did he come all the way to a city just to briefly talk with her? Assistant Wang had gone through the trouble of fixing his travel schedule, but it was all for naught. Assistant Wang held a moment of silence for himself, grieving at the thought of having to revise the schedule again. In her happiness, she decided to accompany Gutong back, and the two unexpectedly ran into Xiaoqiao on the road. Xiaoqiao had already changed out of his formal wear, sporting black pants and a simple white shirt. Gutong greeted him enthusiastically when she saw him. Host Xia. Xiaoqiao smiled faintly. Don't call me that, just call me Xiaoqiao. Gutong smiled back. How could I? Even though I couldn't experience your hosting talent today, I overheard many classmates and seniors who attended, and they were all complimenting you. Host Xia was on fire today. His talent never fails to shine, not once. I don't even need to say how good he is. Xiaoqiao continued to smile. Thank you. His eyes naturally shifted to Xin Haoyue after he finished talking. Before Xin Haoyue could even greet him, he said, When we were on the new building tour, I couldn't find you. I needed to ask you for a favor. What did you need help with? Xin Haoyue recalled how she was practically dragged out by Chen Xinan, and because of that, she didn't know anything that happened. Xiaoqiao shook his head and explained, It was nothing serious. Oh, one of the guests today was an alumnus from your school. Have you met yet? Xin Haoyue's hesitation showed in her eyes. She replied as she gave him an uncertain gaze. Are you talking about Chen Xinan? Xiaoqiao nodded. Though he hadn't seen clearly when he turned around, he was certain the figure dressed in red and white that flashed before him was Xin Haoyue. When surveying the people who were still participating in the tour, he found that only Xin Haoyue, Chen Xinan, and Chen Xinan's assistant were missing. Such suspicious activity made Xiaoqiao worry for Xin Haoyue's safety, but he couldn't just leave midway. He was greatly relieved when he finally saw her again. At the same time, he was curious about Xin Haoyue's relationship with Chen Xinan. But no matter how curious he was, he continuously reminded himself it was Xin Haoyue's right to associate with whomever she wanted in her private life. He had absolutely no right to ask her about anything. Upon mention of Chen Xinan, Xin Haoyue quickly brightened her smile and replied, Oh, he was just telling me he had to leave. Something urgent has come up, and he didn't want to bother everyone. Instead, he asked me to show him the way out without attracting any attention. That was all? Then you've had a hard day. Xiaoqiao smiled and spoke with a gentle tone. You're probably tired from all the hard work today. You should go back and rest early. Of course. Gutong replied. Thank you for your thoughtfulness, Host Xia. You also had a busy day, so sleep early too. After saying their goodbyes to Xiaoqiao, Gutong pulled Xin Haoyue's arm and excitedly asked, Wow, Haoyue, when did you become so close to Xiaoqiao? What? We've only run into each other at the library a few times. We talk for a bit whenever it happens. Xin Haoyue replied. Wow, that actually works? Looks like I need to go to the library with you more often. Gutong exclaimed. Xin Haoyue was speechless. I called you every time I went, but you've never responded like that. Now you're all gung-ho because you found out that your Prince Charming goes there too? Well, of course, the treasure is within our grasp. We need to march forward courageously. Gutong declared energetically. Oh, the one and only Xiaoqiao, he's so cute in that white shirt. Xin Haoyue didn't really pay attention to him. She replied, half-heartedly at best. He's all right. That reaction was so underwhelming. Xin Haoyue laughed and said, What else do you want me to say? How else do you want me to react? I know someone who looks even better with a white shirt on. Shishi, Gutong was overjoyed. I finally have evidence. The person that you think looks good in a white shirt is Chen Xinan. She had seen him earlier that day as well, so she knew what he looked like in a white shirt. Xin Haoyue turned speechless once again. Gutong decided to keep prodding. Simon, you can end this if you confess. It'll only be more painful the more you resist. There's nothing to confess. Xin Haoyue turned to look straight at her. Because nothing is going on between us. At all. Gutong didn't buy it. I don't believe you. If you guys really didn't have any sort of relationship, then why did he ask you and only you to lead the way for him? Even Xin Haoyue didn't know the answer. Why don't you ask him, and tell me what he says? Gutong was confused at how adamant Xin Haoyue was being. There's seriously nothing? Nothing, Xin Haoyue firmly confirmed. Gutong examined her from top to bottom. She wouldn't stop blathering about how unfortunate it was. She was denied the juicy secret relationship she hoped for. As Gutong's display continued, Xin Haoyue watched, shaking her head. This girl could never imagine how heartless Chen Xinan was. It would be for the best if Gutong kept her distance from him too. Soon after, a college was on break. Xin Haoyue never once thought of going back to Shenzhen City. Alongside dance and piano, she signed up for English and French classes. The English classes were easy since she was quite good to begin with, unlike French, where she had next to no experience. Xin Haoyue made absolutely no plans to return home during the break, and she made a series of study plans that she kept a secret from the rest of her family. As expected, once they found out, each family member rejected them completely. It was only because they didn't want her to endure such hardship. Xin Haoyue finally understood why the novel's supporting female failed so badly. The most fundamental reason was, most likely, because her family spoiled her rotten. Xin Haoyue actually wanted to live the relaxed life of a daughter born into a wealthy family, the kind that never did any chores and only waited to be fed. However, whenever she remembered the unforgettable ending to her story, she was deterred from relaxing. She had to accomplish something that would be considered remarkable after graduation. It would be to her advantage that her family didn't collapse, since it would only serve to pile onto her own troubles. Even if it were inevitable for her family would fall apart, if she had a job, she could at least take care of herself. There was a birthday celebration for Chen Xinan's grandpa taking place soon, and the Chen family had sent an invitation to the Xin family. The grandpa's daughter-in-law, Wang Yinlin, even went so far as to make an individualized invitation for Xin Haoyue, insistently asking her to attend. The moment Xin Haoyue saw Wang Yinlin's name positioned right by hers on the golden invitation, a panicked torrent of thoughts rushed through her mind. Oh my God. I'm going to die, and it's because of my mom. Why didn't I just tell her the truth over the phone? If I had, there'd be absolutely no chance that I'd be forced to come back. As night approached, the city lights shone brilliantly in the darkness. In particular, the Chen's villa was as bright as day due to Grandpa Chen's birthday celebration. In the bright, spacious banquet room, Wang Yinlin and Aunt Song were busy greeting the guests, while on the floor above, Grandpa Chen and Chen Xinan's father met with old friends whom they hadn't seen in ages. The spectacular lobby was filled with mingling guests. It was a truly magnificent display. After spending a few moments entertaining their guests, Wang Yinlin looked around for Chen Xinan without any luck. Just as she was about to call out for him, Chen Xinan suddenly appeared behind her. He had returned immediately after completing work for the day. After greeting a handful of the elderly guests, who were well acquainted with the family, he made his way to Wang Yinlin. "Mom, where are Dad and Grandpa?" he asked. Wang Yinlin nodded her head towards the floor above. "On the second floor, talking to your uncle." "All right." Just as Chen Xinan was about to leave, Wang Yinlin pulled him back and said, "You've been at work for the whole day. Go change into a new set of clothes first. Then go see your grandpa, because I have something important to announce." She smiled meaningfully, cluing her son in on the big news. Chen Xinan examined her expression, trying to guess what she would reveal during the banquet. After changing into fresh clothing, Chen Xinan arrived on the second floor, only to find that all the guests had cleared the room. All that remained was Grandpa Chen, Chen An, and Wang Yinlin. There was a birthday celebration for Chen Xinan's grandpa taking place soon, and the Chen family had sent an invitation to the Xin family. The grandpa's daughter-in-law, Wang Yinlin, even went so far as to make an individualized invitation for Xin Haoyue, insistently asking her to attend. The moment Xin Haoyue saw Wang Yinlin's name positioned right by hers on the golden invitation, a panicked torrent of thoughts rushed through her mind. Oh my God! I'm going to die, and it's because of my mom. Why didn't I just tell her the truth over the phone? If I had, there'd be absolutely no chance that I'd be forced to come back. As night approached, the city lights shone brilliantly in the darkness. In particular, the Chen's villa was as bright as day due to Grandpa Chen's birthday celebration. In the bright, spacious banquet room, Wang Yinlin and Aunt Song were busy greeting the guests, while on the floor above, Grandpa Chen and Chen Xinan's father met with old friends whom they hadn't seen in ages. The spectacular lobby was filled with mingling guests. It was a truly magnificent display. After spending a few moments entertaining their guests, Wang Yinlin looked around for Chen Xinan without any luck. Just as she was about to call out for him, Chen Xinan suddenly appeared behind her. He had returned immediately after completing work for the day. After greeting a handful of the elderly guests, who were well acquainted with the family, he made his way to Wang Yinlin. "Mom, where are Dad and Grandpa?" he asked. Wang Yinlin nodded her head towards the floor above. "On the second floor, talking to your uncle." "All right." Just as Chen Xinan was about to leave, Wang Yinlin pulled him back and said, "You've been at work for the whole day. Go change into a new set of clothes first. Then go see your grandpa, because I have something important to announce." She smiled meaningfully, cluing her son in on the big news. Chen Xinan examined her expression, trying to guess what she would reveal during the banquet. After changing into fresh clothing, Chen Xinan arrived on the second floor, only to find that all the guests had cleared the room. All that remained was Grandpa Chen, Chen An, and Wang Yinlin. "Happy birthday, Grandpa." Chen Xinan did his best to show his grandfather respect, which was considerably rare. He realized that he left his gift in his car and was about to leave the room when Wang Yinlin stopped him. "Wait, Xinan, I'd like to tell you something." Chen Xinan turned to look at her. Wang Yinlin gave Grandpa Chen and Chen An a huge smile and said, "Dad, I'm planning to use the party to introduce you to a girl." "Which family's child?" Grandpa Chen asked. Chen Xinan watched Wang Yinlin silently, his gut already warning him that something was terribly wrong, and just after Chen Xinan had a slight premonition, he heard it come true. "She is the daughter of the Xin family, Xin Haoyue," she stated. Chen Xinan furrowed his brow as he heard that accursed name. Wang Yinlin didn't seem to notice the change in his expression and continued obliviously. "I saw her right outside Xinan's apartment once, and she gave such a good first impression." As she talked, Grandpa Chen and Chenon shifted their attention to Chen Xinan in near unison. This could be the one, they thought after seeing his intense demeanor. I also traveled to a city 2 months ago and ran into her at a hospital. We kept each other company for the next few days, and I really felt a connection to her. Dad, I'd like to take her in as a goddaughter, as long as I have your blessing. After finishing, she turned straight over to Chen Xinan and said, You know, I always wished for a daughter. Who would have thought that I'd have a troublesome son instead? She's quite easy to get along with, so I imagine you'll come to like her too when you meet. What do you guys think, Dad? No, Chen Xinan answered. He did so before the two that were asked even had a chance to respond. Both Grandpa Chen and Chenon's eyes flashed with anger at Chen Xinan's outright refusal and blatant display of disrespect. What's the reason for such an answer? Grandpa Chen asked with a grave tone and a deep voice. Chen Xinan had no expression and kept quiet, despite Grandpa Chen's question still hanging in the air. Wang Yinlin pretended to be shocked. But last time you returned from a city, you said that there wasn't anything special going on between you two. You're not a couple, and I want to take her as a goddaughter. You don't have anything to lose. And you even get a sister out of this. She's not fit to be my sister. Then what is she fit to be? Your girlfriend? Wang Yinlin teased, not once forgetting to smile. It was only then that Chen Xinan realized his mother was digging another hole for him to jump into. I don't agree with this. That's all. Mom, if you want it so badly, then do what you like. But I'm not suddenly going to say that I have a sister. It doesn't matter who she is. Chen Xinan went straight down to get his gift to silence Wang Yinlin. It wasn't as though the two were bound by blood, so there was absolutely no point having them act as siblings in some stupid game of house. Chen Xinan couldn't entirely hide his agitation as he went downstairs, and when Mao Xuan saw him, he was confused. What made your face like that? Did someone rub you the wrong way? He asked. Chen Xinan calmed himself and replied, It's nothing. I'm just going to the garage to get something. Are you coming? Sure. The casual reply made Mao Xuan instantly feel at ease. The two of them conversed over a few job-related topics on the way, when Mao Xuan suddenly declared, I just saw Xin Chancheng. Chen Xinan and Xin Chancheng's companies had been engaged in a tense bidding war the month before, which Chen Xinan ultimately won with a slight advantage. Since then, Mao Xuan had come to know Xin Chancheng quite well. Upon mention of the name, Chen Xinan responded nonchalantly with a simple, okay. Mao Xuan was still curious, though. Did Grandpa Chen invite him to his previous birthday celebrations as well? How come I've never seen him? Chen Xinan knew the reason for his question all too well. The Xin family was deliberately invited by his mother. After returning to the lobby, he saw as if on cue, a tall figure next to Chen An. Who else could it be other than Xin Chancheng? Mao Xuan saw him too, noting how the members from both families appeared to be conversing quite intimately. He elbowed Chen Xinan and discreetly asked, When did Aunt and Uncle become so acquainted with the Xin family? Chen Xinan shot a glance at Mao Xuan from just the corner of his eyes. How would I know? There was no way he could know what his mother was planning anymore. Despite the presence of the Xin family, Chen Xinan couldn't spot Xin Haoyue anywhere. She didn't come? Chen Xinan approached and heard Xin Chancheng saying in an apologetic tone. Haoyue is also very sorry. She wanted nothing more but to come to congratulate Grandpa Chen, but she was feeling unwell in every sense of the word. We insisted that she get enough rest, so she, unfortunately, won't be attending today. But when she recovers in a few days, we'll be sure to bring her for a visit. As the Chen family members listened to the apology, they also began to notice Chen Xinan's demeanor. Chen Xinan showed no emotion, but he could still feel Xin Chancheng and his parents' gazes trying to look through him and see what he was thinking. What he was feeling. All he was thinking was a single question. Has she still not come back? Or is she avoiding me? He stopped this train of thought quickly and reprimanded himself for even starting it. There was no point defending her actions with contrived excuses. Whether or not she wanted to come or if she came at all had nothing much to do with him. As for the severity of her illness, if her family knew, then they wouldn't sit around doing nothing. There was absolutely no need for him to worry. Wang Yinlin was the first to become uncomfortable with the silence, which had stolen into the conversation for a few seconds. That's so unfortunate, but it's not that big of a deal. Haoyue did return, right? She replied regretfully. In turn, Bai Ning replied with a smile. Yes, she just arrived this afternoon. Perfect. Tell her that whenever she has the time, she should come by. Our entire family will welcome her with open arms. Right, Sinan? After the mention of her son, Wang Yinlin realized that she had never formally introduced him, and hastily motioned towards him. Mr. Xin, Mrs. Xin, this is my unremarkable rascal of a son, Chen Sinan. Xin Jin obviously knew about Chen Sinan, but played along with a smile. You're much too modest, Mrs. Chen. You say your son is unremarkable, but I'd wager our Chancheng is even more useless. Xin Chancheng and Chen Sinan shared a quick, sympathetic glance as the conversation took an irritating but inevitable turn, before calmly ignoring their families. After a final exchange of pleasantries with the Xin family, Chen Sinan escaped under the pretense of greeting other guests. Shortly after, Xin Chancheng saw an opportunity to speak with Chen Sinan. He walked to Chen Xinan's side, which for once was unaccompanied, as he was finally free of the banquet's guests. He confidently balanced a glass of red wine between his fingers and spoke casually. "What do you want to do?" Chen Xinan had his back turned right until the moment he heard Xin Shencheng's question. He turned to face Xin Shencheng, and with an equally relaxed tone asked, "What do you mean by that? Using every trick up your sleeve to make my sister return from a city. After all that, you'd have me believe the Chen family isn't planning something?" If Xin Shencheng had been on guard sooner, he never would have let Xin Haoyue rush back. "Heh," Chen Xinan scoffed, "but you didn't deny a thing. You are implying the Chen family has some ulterior motive, but in the time you have spent here, have you found any confirmation?" Xin Shencheng had on the edge the whole night but couldn't find any proof. This was why he wanted to test Chen Xinan personally. But how could Chen Xinan go easy for him? "Don't be so suspicious of people," Chen Xinan suggested. "You can never be too careful, particularly where you can get hurt being careless. This goes doubly for you and your family." Xin Shencheng replied bluntly. "I won't try to convince you." Chen Xinan chose not to express his opinions. Xin Shencheng examined him carefully but gave up after realizing that Chen Xinan would never give anything away. He began to fear if he was overly sensitive. But if there truly was no other meaning behind the invitation, why would the Xin family have received one so suddenly in the first place? The two families never maintained any sort of contact, but Wang Yinlin had acted so amicably, it was as if she was talking to old friends. She also wouldn't stop talking to his mother about Xin Haoyue. Xin Shencheng's ponderings over the special invitation eventually resulted in worry for his sister. Was it because Wang Yinlin, for an assortment of reasons, had her eye on Haoyue? The party appeared normal, but was that because Haoyue never came? The more he thought, the more convinced he was. Reaching a satisfying conclusion, he rejoiced. It was incredibly fortunate that Haoyue couldn't attend due to her sickness. Otherwise, he would have had to guard against all of the Chen family's tricks. Meanwhile, Xin Haoyue was lying on her bed with her hands clenched on her stomach. She had been tossing and turning all night, but hadn't managed to find a comfortable position. She lay silently in bed, with nothing but her period to keep her company. She was fine when she had arrived in a city, but perhaps due to learning about the invitation and the sudden wave of anxiety that washed over her, her normally tame period woke like a beast anew. Her face, unnaturally pale, reflected her pain. She had also lost the strength to walk, so there was no way to attend a party. Xin Haoyue stayed in bed since she didn't have the strength for much else, and informed Bai Ning that she couldn't go. Bai Ning cooked brown sugar water for her, but to no avail. She saw that Xin Haoyue was hopelessly ill, and her complexion stayed deathly white despite Bai Ning's efforts. "Rest well. I'll tell the Chen family," she assured Xin Haoyue. "Okay." That was exactly what Xin Haoyue wanted. Though her period was essentially torture, it came at just the right time. She didn't even have to find an excuse to avoid attending. After Xin Haoyue leisurely recuperated at home for a couple of days, she received another invitation. It wasn't as frightening as the first one. Zhong Qin was asking her out for a coffee since they hadn't seen each other for such a long time. If they didn't meet now, once school started, they'd most likely have to wait much longer. Xin Haoyue planned not to return until winter break, so she agreed readily. "Okay, send me the place and time." When Xin Haoyue finally left the house, she not only heard a load of gossip by accident, but met a certain someone as well. Oh, how fate works in mysterious ways. Zhong Qin had asked Xin Haoyue to go clothes shopping with her, but thanks to her period, Xin Haoyue was ultimately too lazy to try anything on. For the whole trip, she basically assumed the role of a personal assistant. She helped Zhong Qin carry bags, pick out clothes, and gave advice where she saw fit. Zhong Qin bought a heaping pile of clothes, and as the two of them leisurely strolled around with their arms locked together, she enthusiastically offered to treat Xin Haoyue to a meal for her help. "Sure," Xin Haoyue replied. She agreed without hesitation. Zhong Qin brought her to a Western steakhouse and made small talk as they waited for their orders to arrive. Zhong Qin smiled and commented, "I didn't think you were coming back for the summer." Xin Haoyue took a sip of water before replying, "I didn't want to come back, but I was deceived." "By who?" Xin Haoyue thought of Wang Yinlin and Bai Ning. She shook her head helplessly and sighed. Never mind, the story would take way too long to tell. Zhong Qin raised her head and saw two women entering. One of them was wearing jean shorts and a white tank top and had just taken off her sunglasses. Zhong Qin was planning to ask Xin Haoyue what she had been up to recently, but she stopped to examine the woman whose sunglasses were taken off. She leaned over the table towards Xin Haoyue and said in a hushed tone, "Look over there. Isn't that girl in the jean shorts next to Ms. Lai from our school? She looks so familiar. I feel like I've seen her at school before." Xin Haoyue followed Zhong Qin's gaze and also saw the two young women. She thought the one that Zhong Qin had alerted her to was only trying to show off with those shorts. The other woman, however, had long hair and wore a light purple dress. It was obvious that she was from a respectable family. "Ms. Lai?" Xin Haoyue took a moment to recall if she knew either of the two, but couldn't. "I don't even know them. Who's Ms. Lai?" she asked in reply. Zhongqin saw the two women, who didn't pay any attention to them, walk to the left side of the table. You don't know about Miss Lai and Chen Xinan? She asked. Sorry? The incident and its fallout were both so bad that I thought for sure you'd have heard. I tried not to mention it since I was afraid you'd get all depressed if I brought it up, Zhongqin said with disbelief. Realizing this gossip was about Chen Xinan, Xin Haoyue immediately lost interest. Since you're so concerned for me, then don't talk about it, she said. It would be better if she didn't know. No. Don't be like that. I'll tell you, know both yourself and your opponent, so that you may taste victory in every battle, Zhongqin declared confidently. Near the end of June, an entertainment company exposed a bunch of tabloid-worthy pictures of Chen Xinan. In them, there was one of him and yours truly over there, Ms. Lai, embracing intimately. The media went totally nuts over it, especially since it was Chen Xinan's first time ever exposing that kind of relationship with a woman to the public. That picture was evidence, but in less than 3 hours, he managed to silence all the news about it. The head of the company responsible for the leak even released a public apology to Chen Xinan at the event, saying that he shouldn't have stirred up such trouble over nonsense. Soon after, Chen's PR department clarified on a post that Chen Xinan had absolutely no relationship with Ms. Lai and that they would be pursuing legal action. Xin Haoyue listened to Zhongqin intently and remarked, that neat freak germaphobe probably took it pretty badly. Just thinking of Chen Xinan's disgusted face was satisfying. Not bad at all. Are you not curious about them? Zhongqin was stupefied. What's there to be curious about? If they're really in a relationship or not. Zhongqin was getting impatient. Didn't Chen Xinan himself say that they're not? Xin Haoyue replied. And you're going to believe him, just like that? Xin Haoyue was speechless. The reason she believed him was because she knew that Chen Xinan only had a relationship with Sheng Wenyang. Every other female character slipped away like morning dew into the earth. When all was said and done, they were worthless to him and powerless against their fate. Xin Haoyue looked into Zhongqin's hopeful eyes and cleared her throat in an attempt to subtly change the topic. This is someone else's private life, so we shouldn't really care. Zhongqin looked at her in confusion, but eventually decided to move on. By then, the food had arrived. While Zhongqin cut into her steak, she suddenly exclaimed, I finally remembered her. Do you know the girl that was with Ms. Lai? That was Xi. The Xi from the art department. Xi? Xin Haoyue said the name and her eyes gradually widened with shock. Yeah, Xi. The young miss from the Xi family. I've heard her reputation at school wasn't very good. So her last name is Xi. Xin Haoyue suddenly remembered that the girl had also appeared in the novel once or twice. Xi was a supporting female character, and Chen Xinan had disliked her so much he often made trouble for her. She clearly remembered when she teleported, she heard a girl blurt out that Xi was the one who pushed her down the stairs. I didn't expect it to be her. Xin Haoyue was always an eye for an eye kind of person, but she hadn't put much thought into how she'd get her revenge. To start, she wasn't terribly experienced. Zhongqin observed how deep in thought Xin Haoyue was, and asked, You guys know each other? We have a bit of a complex relationship? Xin Haoyue explained as she stood up. Eat first. I need to go to the washroom. Xin Haoyue wasn't even planning on dealing with Xi, yet she had already run into her. Just after leaving the washroom, she spotted Xi leaning against the wall by the entrance. Xi was waiting for her. I never would have thought I'd see the Xin family's bitch ever again in Shenzhen City, but now I've had the misfortune of actually seeing you again. Xi said the minute she saw Xin Haoyue emerge from the bathroom. After a long stretch of silence, the lack of reply from Xin Haoyue made the interaction deeply unsettling. Xi looked over at her and met her gaze directly. Looks like you really did lose your memory. Don't remember who I am? I'll tell you. I'm Xi, the one that made you fall down the stairs. Slap. Just as Xi finished, she was struck cleanly across the face by Xin Haoyue. Xin Haoyue felt the residual sting in her palm when she retracted her hand. It was her first time ever slapping someone, but it was a pleasure unlike any other. Xin Haoyue smiled, looking at Xi's reddened face and smirked at how ridiculous she looked. Yeah, I did lose my memory, but thanks for reminding me. Your last name is Xi, right? I'll make sure to return the pain twice over, she said smugly. Don't get too full of yourself, Xin Haoyue. Xi screamed. She threw herself towards Xin Haoyue like a wild creature but never reached her target. Xin Haoyue nimbly dodged, while also managing to take hold of Xi's wrist. She twisted her body sideways and moved behind Xi, locking Xi's arm behind her back and slamming her against the wall. Xi squirmed with a newfound terror as she was pinned. You're not Xin Haoyue. She doesn't know these kinds of moves. Who are you? Let go of me. You don't need to be concerned over who I am. All you need to care about is that you're in my debt for as long as you live, and if you want me to let you go, it'll be easy enough to convince me to. Watch that mouth of yours next time, or if I'm not in a good mood, I just might decide to throw you off the side of a building. Have you ever seen the fluids that trickle out of a crushed skull? Xin Haoyue leaned in so close that her warm breath teased Xi's ear. The sight is absolutely beautiful. She relished every single syllable of her threat. Xin Haoyue, you fucking bitch. Xin twisted Shishi's wrist further, making her screech in pain. Let go now. If I hear you say another word, I'll make sure you pay up everything you owe me. Everything. From then till now. Xin threw her away with disgust and shot a final abhorrent glare before leaving. If she wanted to take revenge, it looked like it wasn't going to be as hard as she had expected. While Xin contemplated how she wanted Shishi to pay, she heard Shishi's voice behind her. I'm warning you to stop acting so arrogant. You probably know the person who was with me. Even though Chen Xinan made her deny the rumors, my cousin is still dating him. She shared meals with him before, and can enter the Chen residence freely. Grandpa Chen likes her so much, she'll be the one to marry Chen Xinan sooner or later. Xin didn't want to listen to Shishi anymore, but could still hear her eagerly chirping. Even if Chen Xinan doesn't marry my cousin, there's still Senior Sheng, so you'll never get the chance. Xin laughed at the comment, continuing to turn away from her. Who Chen Xinan would be with had nothing to do with her. Xin returned and saw that Zhongqin had finished eating, so she asked, shall we go? Sure. Zhongqin didn't really have any objections. On the way, she asked, did you run into any more trouble with Shishi? I saw her also go to the bathroom right after you left, and she was shooting serious daggers at you. Well, we do have some issues with each other. Xin replied. What do you mean? I can't really explain since I don't even understand it myself. What Xin could figure out was that the two of them had started fighting over Chen Xinan. In the past, Shishi wasn't happy about her being with Chen Xinan all day, and there was probably a point where she just couldn't take Shishi's provocations anymore. She still never remembered the moment when Shishi pushed her down the stairs in the novel. Her character was always bouncing around so energetically, so there were barely any scenes that described her injuries. What went wrong in the storyline? Xin couldn't wrap her head around it, but she had the feeling that she couldn't just let Shishi do as she pleased. Shishi would probably act out even more in the future. And if Xin had someone who thought of her as an enemy, how would she ever live a regular life with someone always causing trouble for her? The new development only reinforced the thought that constantly haunted her. Shenzhen City wasn't right for her. Xin went back to a city the following day. Xin Chencheng drove her to the airport and reminded her to take care of herself, but kept the goodbyes short as he had to rush back for a business meeting. While waiting in the airport lounge, Xin looked around only to see Assistant Wang in a black shirt. She froze for a beat before looking away, trying to minimize her presence. Nearly 99% of the time, wherever Assistant Wang went, Chen Xinan would be. She couldn't afford to be careless. Assistant Wang, unfortunately, saw her too, and nearly stumbled before maintaining his stride. He looked worriedly at his boss on his left. This felt like it, almost, wasn't a mere coincidence. Had the two planned to board the same flight beforehand? Assistant Wang was so obvious that something was wrong. Chen Xinan could tell almost straight away. What's with that look? Well, Assistant Wang pointed to Xin direction. Miss Xin is also here. Chen Xinan's turned to where Assistant Wang pointed. Sunlight shone through the window and brightened the surroundings. In the rambunctious airport lounge, Xin was sitting alone in a chair near the aisle, wearing headphones and quietly staring at her phone. She was completely unaware of her surroundings. Chen Xinan's sight lingered a bit longer. Noticing Xin seemed to have never looked away from her screen, he allowed a faint smile to curl his lips. Xin held her breath for the longest time, and finally let out a sigh of relief after she felt Chen Xinan's gaze on her disappear. What kind of coincidence was this? Meeting again? Xin heard the boarding announcement and caught them mentioning Country M. Wasn't Sheng Wenyang there too? So it was sort of like traveling 1,000 miles to attend a date. Xin didn't spend much time thinking about it. After returning to a city, she was busy with life as usual and became even busier after school started. As the freshmen started their semester in September, Xin also attended the once-a-year hosting competition to hone her skills. In the competition, one must show off their talent. There were 2 options for the competition, piano and dance. After consideration, she chose dance. When her dance teacher found out that she was participating in her school's host competition, her dance teacher had personally adapted a piece of ancient dance music for her. At the end of September, Xin performance can be described as exemplary during the host competition. A lot of people praised her performance as catching their attention. Whether it be her facial expressions, body language, or tone, all of these things made the audience feel at ease. Her language expressions and improvisational performance especially made her stand out from all the other participants. Xin was gratified. Before she had transmigrated, she had already been practicing for this profession in secret because she loved it. Now that the environment she was in allowed her to learn it without restrictions, she became even more motivated to improve and was satisfied with the results. But for the amateurs, what caught their attention was Xinxi's dance and her light pink long flowing silk inner sleeves. Her dance moves flowed smoothly, showing both strength and gracefulness in her motions. The onlookers can sense not only the profoundness of her dance, but also the sentiments of the song by her body language and facial expressions. In other words, it was amazing. Even Gu Tong, who was quite close to her, commented in shock. I didn't even know that your dancing skill was this good. Gu Tong inquired after her backstage, after Xin Haoyue finished her performance. She also felt that she had performed well. This was the first time she was so deeply immersed into this song since she first learned it, so she answered breathlessly with a smile. There's a lot you don't know about. After seeing her smile, Xia Chao, the host of the show, can't help but freeze for a few seconds. He didn't want to admit that Xin Haoyue was the only person who was able to surprise him out of all the events he hosted. He can feel her confidence, as well as her effort and beauty while she was dancing. He had to admit that he wanted to pay more attention to her and uncover the other secrets she was hiding. Xin Haoyue's classmates in Shenzhen City were also amazed by her. Some students from a college posted some clips of the highlights of the competition onto the school's official website, but many other students demanded that they only wanted to see Xin Haoyue's dance videos. As a result, after the videos were posted, there were considerable views, and the news of it had spread back to Xin Haoyue's school. Zhang Qin complimented her right after he saw it on the web forum. That was amazing. You were extremely beautiful. Xin Haoyue was just about to accept his compliment when Zhang Qin continued. If Senior Chen saw it, will he regret that he didn't accept your pursuit? The more I look at you, the more beautiful you look. The original bright smile on Xin Haoyue's face froze on her after she heard him mention that Chen person. Zhang Qin, did you do that on purpose? What? Nothing. Xin Haoyue didn't want to bring Chen Xinan up. Naturally, she became busier as she joined the school's hosting team for the new semester. She was as busy as a spinning top during the first month of host training. At the end of November, she started to officially host events. As expected, she received considerable praise. During the New Year evening party, out of the 4 hosts, she and Xia Qiao had shown great chemistry together while hosting. Some students even gossiped about it. They would be a golden couple and a good match. Xin Haoyue didn't bother to care for those comments, but after reading the comments, she realized that she had more contact with Xia Qiao because of this job. As finals week was approaching, she was too busy studying for the tests, so she didn't think more about it. During the winter break, Xin Haoyue stayed in City A for half a month using the excuse of studying. However, she was urged by the Xin family to return home for the Spring Festival. While she was buying the merchandise sold for Chinese New Year with Bai Ning said, "What's so good about City A? You just arrived yesterday, and tomorrow will be New Year's Eve already." Xin Haoyue coaxed her. "Mom, don't get mad. I'll stay a few days extra after the New Year ends." Bai Ning agreed reluctantly. "You can't go back so early after New Year." Fine. Xin Haoyue agreed orally, but she was already planning the best day to leave. She really thought that a city was good in every way. At least there was no one from the book in a city. Since there was no one there, she didn't have to worry too much. It also gave her the chance to be herself without any restrictions. She was worried about staying in Shenzhen City for too long. Xin Haoyue was one of the important characters that would carry the plot forward, so she was scared that the longer she stayed, the greater the chance that the plot will follow the storyline. She didn't want all her efforts to be in vain if the ending will be the same as it was in the original book, or else it would be more than just tragic. While she was lost in her train of thought, she was pulled back to the present when she heard someone call out, "Haoyue." Xin Haoyue turned to look back and saw Ji Yi, who was wearing a black sweater, staring at her excitedly. "Xin Haoyue, you're back? I thought I wouldn't see you again until your graduation ceremony." Xin Haoyue never considered him to be an acquaintance, so she found the way he spoke so familiar to her to be inappropriate. As a result, she replied expressionlessly, "That's also possible." Ji didn't care about her coldness and continued, "I saw your dance video at a college. You were great. I told you that your dance would amaze everyone last time, but no matter what, you refused to join the competition. Now doesn't the result of host competition prove my words?" Hehe. "Xin Haoyue, I just happened to invite a lot of my classmates to a party. Do you want to go together? They all know about you too." Xin Haoyue laughed sarcastically on the inside, thinking that her brain must have problems if she accepted the invitation. "They know about me, but I don't know about them, so what's the point of me going?" "To meet each other, and even if you don't know them, you'll be acquainted afterwards," Ji said candidly. Xin Haoyue rolled her eyes at him. Coincidentally, Bai Ning yelled her name while she was picking fruits. Xin Haoyue responded to her mother that she was coming before she said to Ji hastily, "Thank you for your kindness, but I'm not going. Bye." "Hey, Xin Haoyue." After Xin Haoyue ran a few steps, she turned around immediately and said, "Don't follow me." Ji was stupefied. Why did she become so hostile after coming back from City A? The more he thought about it, the more he thought that Xin Haoyue was heartless. He even called Mao Xiuan to complain. "I told you she's not suitable for Senior Chen. I'm smart enough to tell." After Mao Xiuan finished listening to Ji's long complaint, he waited for him to take a break before Mao Xiuan replied, Who told you to provoke her? Why would she go to your class reunion when she's not even familiar with you? She doesn't even know your classmates. It's going to be awkward if she went." It's all because Senior Chen isn't going. If Senior Chen went, she would immediately agree to go. Senior Mao, you don't understand, Xin Haoyue. Mao Shiyuan scoffed at him and said, like you know a lot about her. After he finished speaking, he hung up the phone because he didn't want to talk to him anymore. Chen Xinan heard the last sentence when he walked into Mao Shiyuan's office, but he didn't ask. The two of them discussed work as usual. After they finished discussing, Mao Shiyuan finally asked, are you still not planning to let me take a break for the new year? You want to have a break? Chen Xinan lifted his eyes to look at him. Mao Shiyuan nodded. Sure, Chen Xinan said generously. Mao Shiyuan felt his spirits finally return to him after he heard Chen Xinan's reply. He had been forced to work overtime while other employees left for break, so he had to take care of all the leftover tasks. Mao Shiyuan hadn't slept well in such a long time. After he thought of Chen Xinan's inconsiderate orders, he said suddenly, Ji said there's a class reunion today. It's still pretty early. Do you want to go have some fun? You can go. I'm not going. I have to go back to my grandpa's place later. Mao Shiyuan already predicted his lack of interest in these kinds of events. He thought of Ji's words and examined Chen Xinan's expression as he meaningfully said, Ji said he saw Xin Haoyue in the mall. Mao Shiyuan thought of Ji's words and examined Chen Xinan's expression as he meaningfully said, Ji said he saw Xin Haoyue in the mall. Ji invited her to go, but she rejected. I'm suddenly very curious. If you are going, would Xin Haoyue agree to go too? Chen Xinan slowly lifted his eyes and glanced at him. I think you are too idle. How about spending a little time and finishing the project proposal? No, I won't mention it anymore. CEO Chen, please let me go. Humph. Chen Xinan contemplated about it while he was on the way home, but he still drove back to his old house. Since she didn't want to see him, why should he go meet her? After the encounter with Ji Yi, Xin Haoyue became even more defensive. Now, she couldn't even go out of her house on New Year's. She also realized on the night of New Year's Eve that there was no Chinese New Year special. How sinful. She asked Xin Chencheng, aren't you going to watch the Chinese New Year special? What Chinese New Year special? Xin Cheng asked in confusion. The next second, she became the stupid one. Xin Haoyue was speechless. How can the author of this book not write about the Chinese New Year special? She was bored of staying at home. Her parents asked her to visit their relatives and friends' house with them to wish them a happy new year, but she refused. She didn't want to go out at all. Bai Ning even suggested that she should visit the Chen family, since Wen Yinlin invited Xin Haoyue last time, but she brushed off the advice. Bai Ning was still reluctant about it. She was afraid that the Chen family will think that Xin Haoyue had no manners. Compared to Chen Xinan, Xin Haoyue thought that everything else was less important. Manners? Not important. No matter what, she won't go, she couldn't go, and definitely would not go. So, when Chen Xinan was welcoming the Xin parents, he was extremely angry. Xin Haoyue, you are ruthless. Xin Haoyue rushed back to City A after staying home for a few days. Even until the end of summer vacation, she didn't go back to Shengjin City again. Xia Chao was recommended by the school to the TV station in College A during his internship period. He told Xin Haoyue that the station was planning to start an outdoor challenge program, so they were currently recruiting new hosts to get involved. This will significantly enhance her hosting skills, and such an opportunity was hard to come by. Xia Chao told her that if she was interested in it, she should start preparing for the audition and take part in it. Xin Haoyue was surprised. I can go too? Xia Chao explained smilingly. The station puts emphasis on talent, and you fit the requirements. Oh. Xin Haoyue looked at his long eyelashes and asked, why are you telling me this? Xia Chao grinned. Maybe because I have faith in you. And isn't everybody else saying that we have good teamwork? I also think that our teamwork is pretty good, so, are you going to sign up? Xin Haoyue puffed her cheeks and thought over it. The answer was obviously, yes. While preparing for her busy finals, she also had to prepare for the station's tests, interviews, and other processes. Then, after she was done with her finals, the TV station also contacted her saying that she was accepted. While Zhang Qin called her to ask about her summer plans, she was shocked upon hearing that Xin Haoyue was going to stay in City A to improve her skills. Are you planning to stay in City A from now on? I'll see how it goes. Xin Haoyue can't guarantee that she will be successful as Xia Chao, who was able to stay in the TV station right after graduation. Zhang Qin analyzed. I think you have a pretty good chance. After all, you already got in and this is a great opportunity for you. However, Xin Haoyue was more realistic. She will be hosting a brand new show. The outcome of the show was still an unknown factor. But she also understood that this program was very important for her future. She must put in all her efforts and start off successfully. The plane slowly rose. Xin Haoyue was in a trance as the familiar scenery outside the window gradually blurred. Time flew by pretty fast in the novel. Two young and beautiful figures got off the plane and passed through the crowd towards the airport exit. Shenzhen City's September sky was blue and cloudless as the sunlight shone softly upon the crowds. As the gentle breeze blew past them, it gave people a sense of comfort and happiness. While enjoying the warm sun and the soft breeze, Xia Chao, who wore a black long-sleeved shirt and long pants, curved the corners of his lips and exclaimed, "I finally understand why you're always so calm when dealing with different situations." "What do you mean by that?" Xin Haoyue tilted her head to look at him while taking off her sunglasses. The unique features of a local environment always give special characteristics to its residents. Xiaoqiao smiled brightly at her. Xin Haoyue understood the underlying meaning in his phrase. He was complimenting the climate of Shenzhen City. It was true, since even in the novel, the author described Shenzhen City as warm in winter and cool in the summer. It was a good place to live. All 4 seasons felt like spring. Xin Haoyue sighed in regret. Xiaoqiao was wrong. No matter how great Shenzhen City was, it wasn't the place where she was born, so this place had nothing to do with her growth. She didn't want to reminisce about her past, so she changed the subject and asked, "You only have 2 days of vacation, why did you want to come to Shenzhen City with me?" Xiaoqiao smiled and replied, "I want to talk to people and gain more experience. I also want to take a look at Shenzhen City's scenery and visit your school." Xin Haoyue was about to ask, "What's there to see in Shenzhen College?" when she was disrupted by her phone ringing in her purse. She took her cell phone and saw that it was a call from Zhong Qin. 3 months ago, during the graduation ceremony, Zhong Qin called her to remind her that no matter how late her program would end, she must rush back to Shenzhen City. However, Xin Haoyue still couldn't go back in time for the graduation ceremony due to her job. Because of this, Zhong Qin had complained about it for a long time until Xin Haoyue couldn't stand it anymore. She wore her graduation gown once again and took some photos, before sending it to her friend. Only after that did Zhong Qin stop mentioning that incident. This time, it was the celebration for Shenzhen College's 100-year anniversary. After knowing that Xin Haoyue had agreed to Principal Zhao's invitation of being the host of their anniversary celebration, Zhong Qin would call Haoyue to remind her every day, because she was worried that the same thing would happen. Even today, Zhong Qin called her before she got on the plane and called once again when she landed. Xin Haoyue couldn't help but tease her after picking up the phone. "Darling, strangers would think that we are a couple because of how frequently you check on me. We were not far from that point anyways. I even think that I worry more about you than myself. I'm about to become your mother." "That's enough. If I have such a young mother, I would be scared to death." Zhong Qin laughed and scolded her. Then she asked, "Have you landed yet? When are you free? I'll treat you." "I'll probably be free in the evening. I'm going to check out the college first to understand how the celebration will proceed." "Okay, sure. Give me a call when you're finished." After Xin Haoyue hung up, she asked Xiaoqiao if he wanted to unpack at the hotel first, or go to school with her and then accompany her back to the hotel later. Xiaoqiao looked at her smilingly and replied, "Of course I'm going to school with you first." "Okay." Xin Haoyue fixed her hair that was messed up by the wind, and then stretched out her arm to call for a taxi. Xiaoqiao can't help but smile as he looked at how nimbly she had handled all situations. The outdoor challenge show that was launched last summer in City A received exceptionally favorable ratings. The 3 hosts of the program, a senior with 5 to 6 years of experience, newcomer Xin Haoyue, and Xiaoqiao, all received high praises for the audience for their performance. Xin Haoyue's hosting style was dignified, magnanimous, and natural, which got her a lot of people's praise. Her Weibo fans reached 100,000 people within only half a month of opening her Weibo account. The TV station of City A also favored her hosting talent, so they signed a contract to keep her in their TV station. While Xin Haoyue was a senior in college, she joined a few other reality shows in the station, and all her performances was remarkable. Within a year, she transformed from a newbie in the industry to a host with moderate popularity. As her workloads continued to increase, she became busier, and so she only returned to Shenzhen City a handful of times. The only reason she came back this time was solely because Principal Zhao asked her again and again, hoping that she would come back to her alma mater to help out. Xin Haoyue couldn't refuse it, so she accepted the invitation. Upon arriving at her alma mater, she went straight to the principal's office. Upon pushing the door open, the faint smile on her face froze when she saw a certain person in a dark suit sitting across from Principal Zhao. "Chen Xinan?" Xin Haoyue's fair hands were still on the handle when she was frozen in place. Why would Chen Xinan be here at this time? Who can tell her? Was it too late for her to withdraw? Obviously, there wasn't enough time for her to leave unnoticed. Principal Zhao looked up in her direction the moment the door opened. When he saw Xin Haoyue, he nodded delightfully and then secretly examined the expression on the person across from him. He was about to speak when another voice came from outside the door. "Haoyue, what happened? Why don't you go in?" A man's voice? Principal Zhao was very surprised. "Little Xin, who's outside?" "Who is it?" Shen Xinan already had an answer in his thoughts. It was the male host, Xiaoqiao. Upon hearing the question, Xin Haoyue suddenly realized that she was acting inappropriately. She pushed open the door immediately and walked a few steps forward to introduce Xiaoqiao. "Principal, this is my colleague, Xiaoqiao." As Xiaoqiao and Principal Zhao greeted each other, the man who had his back facing them suddenly stood up. Chen Xinan turned around. His eyes skimmed over Xin Haoyue and then landed on Xiaoqiao. Xiaoqiao felt the change in the atmosphere around him when Chen Xinan stood up. An oppressive aura surrounded him and it made him displeased. Chen Xinan curved the corners of his lips slightly and said with a lukewarm attitude, "Host Xia, we haven't seen each other in a long time." Xiaoqiao replied with courtesy, "CEO Chen, long time no see. It had been more than 2 years since we last met at College A. Hehe." Chen Xinan's sight shifted to Xin Haoyue. Indeed, it had been more than 2 years. Xin Haoyue felt that there was an underlying meaning behind his words, but she ignored his gaze. She asked Principal Zhao for the schedule of the anniversary celebration and asked, "Is the order of the programs confirmed?" "They will rehearse in the afternoon, so you can adjust the order for tonight's celebration." Xin Haoyue knew that Principal Zhao had given her the authority to control the program, so she replied, "Okay, thank you, Principal Zhao. Where are the other hosts?" "There are 3 other hosts. Their names are on the list. You guys can work on building good relationships with each other during the rehearsal." Xin Haoyue looked down at the papers in her hand and flipped through them while answering without hesitation, "Sure." Seeing her accepting the request without any hesitation, Principal Zhao said delightfully, "If the students and the media knew that you are hosting the show tomorrow, they would be very excited." Seeing her accepting the request without any hesitation, Principal Zhao said delightfully, "If the students and the media knew that you are hosting the show tomorrow, they would be very excited." "Principal Zhao, you're overestimating me," Xin Haoyue smiled and replied with ease. "I know about your popularity in City A. I watched your shows and they were great. I believe that I have judged you correctly." Principal Zhao continued, "Right, Anan?" Chen Xinan curved the corner of his lips slightly to show his approval. Seeing that her list of things to do was completed, Xin Haoyue wrapped up the conversation and said, "Principal Zhao, I'm going back now. I'll return in the afternoon for rehearsal." She had to eat lunch, bring Xiaoqiao to the hotel, and then write the script for tomorrow's anniversary celebration party. Principal Zhao thought that this opportunity was rare, so he didn't want to let her go so easily. "It's rare for host Xia and Xinan to be here. How about I'll treat you guys to a meal? You have to give me face, so let's have lunch together." "Principal Zhao, can you not be this polite?" Chen Xinan seemed to have seen her unwillingness, so he commented coldly, "Is host Xin looking down on Principal Zhao?" Xin Haoyue looked towards him with a forced smile. "Chen Xinan, this person is sick." "CEO Chen, you are joking. How am I looking down at Principal Zhao?" "I just thought that we are being impolite by having Principal Zhao treat us." "That's easy to solve. Just make host Xin treat us then." Chen Xinan along followed her words. His appearance was natural as it could possibly be. Xin Haoyue gritted her teeth secretly, and then smiled to Principal Zhao's smiling face. "Deal. Let Principal Zhao choose the place. I'm not familiar around here." "No problem." Principal Zhao was happy to see this result without doing anything himself. Chen Xinan made a humph sound, then walked out of the office first. Xiaoqiao stood to the side. His confusion from a few years ago dissipated as he watched the exchanges between the 3 of them. Xin Haoyue and Chen Xinan must have had a past that he didn't know about. Should he think about how to confess directly to Xin Haoyue even though it was obvious to him that Xin Haoyue only saw him as a friend the entire time? Should he confess? If it fails, will they still be able to maintain their current friendship? Xiaoqiao was hesitant. Principal Zhao and Xin Haoyue already decided which restaurant they were going to go, and Principal Zhao suggested that the 4 of them take Chen Xinan's car to get there. Xin Haoyue didn't have her car with her, so it would be convenient to ride Chen Xinan's car. But she was also unwilling at the same time, so she wanted to know Xiaoqiao's opinion. Xiaoqiao froze for a while, then replied smilingly, "I'll do whatever is convenient for my hostess." Thus, when Principal Zhao got on the back seat, Xiaoqiao and Xin Haoyue were stupefied. Xin Haoyue became overwhelmed. "Principal, what are you planning to do?" Principal Zhao laughed when he noticed the awkward situation between the 2. "I'm old, so it's uncomfortable for me to wear the seatbelt. I'll leave front row seats for you young people." "Oh." Xin Haoyue thought inside her head. "Yeah, you are old. We all respect the elders and cherish the young." While she was hesitating between the front passenger seat and the back passenger seat, Xiaoqiao quickly occupied the front passenger. As he put on his safety belt, he asked Chen Xinan smilingly, "CEO Chen, you don't mind I sit here, right?" Chen Xinan tilted his eyes and glanced at him for a second without any expression on his face. "Yes, I do mind." Xin Haoyue watched the familiar yet unfamiliar scenery outside the window. She felt that there was something strange going on with the current situation. Chen Xinan was completely focused on driving the car. She was focused on looking at the scenery outside, while Xiaoqiao and Principal Zhao were immersed on chatting about this and that. This indescribable oddness lasted until the end of their dinner. After Xin Haoyue ate a tasteless meal, she was glad that she could finally get rid of Chen Xinan. However, as they exited the restaurant, Chen Xinan unexpectedly said, "Get on the car." "Xin Haoyue, eh?" Chen Xinan glanced at Xiaoqiao and said, "Isn't this host Xia's first time in Shenzhen City? Then we should act as a host to show you around." When Chen Xinan said "we," his eyes were staring straight at Xin Haoyue. Xin Haoyue felt her scalp turn numb by his stare. There should be no "we" in that sentence. She doesn't need his kindness. She was about to reject it politely when Principal Zhao said, "That would be great. I had been wondering where we should let our Xiao reside. Since it's like this, I'll leave this to you, Anan." Xiao smiled faintly. "I don't want to bother Principal Zhao and CEO Xing. I'll go to the hotel myself." "Don't be so polite, Xiao. Just let him bring you along." Principal Zhao smiled sincerely. Xin held back the urge to scratch her scalp in frustration. What are they planning? After Chen Xinan escorted Principal Zhao back to the school and Xiao to the hotel, he coldly spoke to Xin without glancing at her. "Get on the car." Xin stood next to the car and looked up at him, thinking stubbornly, "I won't enter your car a second time." Now that everyone else had left, he began to use his oppressive aura. Xin can't imagine how dumb she would be if she get on his car. She ignored him and turned around to walk away. Just as she stretched out her arm to hail a taxi, Chen Xinan grabbed her slender wrist and dragged her in the direction of his car. Xin tried to struggle out of his grip, but Chen Xinan glared at her with his sharp eyes. "If you dare to cause more trouble, I promise tomorrow's headline will be about me and you." Xin gritted her teeth and glared at him aggressively. "Do you think that you're amazing just because you have money?" Chen Xinan lowered his eyes and sneaked a glance at her. He was content when he saw her baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. After placing her into the passenger seat, he closed the car door upon seeing that she sat there quietly. Chen Xinan got in the car and put on his seatbelt. He looked at her and saw that she seemed angered to the point that her face was expressionless. "Does host Xin want me to put the seatbelt on for you?" Xin snorted and didn't spare him a glance as she fastened her seatbelt on in frustration. She replied with a rude tone, "CEO Chen, forgive me for being slow, but what do you mean by this?" "You don't know what I meant by this. If host Xin thought about it carefully, how would you not know?" Xin took a deep breath. She was unwilling to play around with him. "I want to go home," Xin said directly. Since he seems addicted to acting as a driver, she'll return the favor to him. Chen Xinan glanced at her coldly, only to see that she had already turned her head the other way. He felt a little suffocated by this. The car ride was very quiet, besides the few times when Chen Xinan had briefly picked up a few phone calls. Xin continued to look at the scenery flashing by the window. She tried her best to ignore his presence when she suddenly said, "That's not the direction to my house." Chen Xinan glanced at her and humphed inaudibly. "CEO Chen, I apologize for troubling you by sending me home." Xin tried her best to keep calm. She was afraid that she couldn't resist the urge to go up and bite him. She had just came back and she'd been seeing him all day. What's up with that? "Did I agree to bring you home?" Chen Xinan said with a plain tone. "You?" Xin was speechless. What was this person planning to do? The car drove into a familiar residential area, and after a long time of contemplation, she finally remembered why this place was so familiar. This was the area where Chen Xinan lived. While Chen Xinan was unbuckling his seatbelt, Xin deliberately smiled at him and asked, "CEO Chen, are you going to invite me in for a cup of tea?" "Yes, is host Xin going to do me this favor?" "I don't want to." Chen Xinan tilted his head and looked at her for a long period of time. He looked at her for so long that Xin felt chills run down her spine. Finally, in a serious tone, he asked, "What's Xiao's relationship with you?" "What relationship? Are you guys going out?" Xin was stupefied by this sudden question. Why did this person suddenly become interested in Xiao? Chen Xinan watched her, blinked her beautiful pair of eyes. It seemed like she was pondering about how to answer his question, but Chen Xinan lost his patience, so he said impatiently, "Don't talk to him." Xin was speechless. "CEO Chen, I think your request is over the top. First of all, Xiao is my alumnus. Second, he's also my coworker. Why do I have to talk less with him?" When Chen Xinan heard that, he faintly smiled. He turned around and reached out his hand and lifted her chin by taking advantage of how close they were. Xin was suddenly forced to face his handsome face and deep black eyes. She had never been so intimate with the opposite sex before, so her cheeks began to burn up. She wanted to keep her calm, so she lifted one of her arms to push away his hand. But he quickly grabbed her arm and pressed it against the back of the car seat. This position. Xin clenched her teeth and tried to scratch him with her other hand, but he caught her other wrist as expected. Although her hands were restricted, she was able to make him let go of her chin. But there was a burning sensation in the place where he touched her, making her feel very uncomfortable. Why did Chen Xinan touch her? Xin was angry at how he was getting fresh with her without saying anything. "Chen Xinan, I think you're the person whom I need to talk less to. Also, you better stop touching me." Chen Xinan chuckled again. "Are you going to say how it's improper for me and women to touch each other? If you really think so, why didn't you say anything when Xiao touched your elbow when we were eating?" "When we were eating?" Xin thought for a long time before she finally recalled how Xiao had touched her elbow because he was reminding her not to drink cold water. He told the waiter to change her cold water to warm water. She didn't take his action to heart. She didn't realize that Chen Xinan was sitting across from her during dinner, so he was able to see everything. Xin strengthened her nerve and confidently asked, "Do you think you guys are comparable?" Chen Xinan replied immediately without any hesitation. I don't compare myself with people like him. Xin Haoyue was disgusted with how Chen Xinan thought of himself as the best. She refuted him. What's wrong with people like him? Oh right, he's not as conceited CEO Chen is. He also doesn't get fresh with me like what CEO Chen is doing right now, right? Chen Xinan listened to every word she said, and it seemed to him that in her opinion, Xiaochao was good no matter what while he was considered unendurable in every way. He frowned and asked, Is that how you see me? Chen Xinan, does it matter how I see you? Stop talking nonsense with me and let go of me. Humph. It seems like you can't wait for me to let you go. No kidding. You should try this position. Would you be comfortable in this position? Both of her hands were pressed against the back of the car seat, and because he was so close to her, she had to adjust her breathing rhythm. She was angry, and this felt unpleasant in every way. Humph? Xin Haoyue, I will grant you your wish, so from now on, you better behave. What wish did you grant me? Xin Haoyue was confused. Chen Xinan's expression suddenly changed subtly. Serves you right that you only got this far during those years. This was a direct verbal abuse. She worked so hard to get here. Did he know how many small steps she had to take? Did he know much hard work and effort she had put forth all this time? Although she still hasn't become the top host, how did she become an eyesore in his eyes? What right did he have to belittle the hard work she had put into her work? Xin Haoyue's tone turned cold. CEO Chen, I'm just a regular civilian. So I'm different from you. You were born with a halo. But what I have right now is not something you can belittle, even though they might not seem as glorious, but at least they are things that I obtained through my own hard work. It was rare for her to have such a serious expression. Chen Xinan remained calm and collected as he loosened his grip on her hands and said, Go upstairs and change into clean clothes. When the time comes, I'll send you back to school. Thank you, but I don't need it. Xin Haoyue opened the car door, got off, and then took out her phone to call someone. She will just tell Xin Chancheng to pick her up. She doesn't believe that Chen Xinan would dare to get fresh with her in front of Xin Chancheng. Xin Haoyue found Xin Chancheng's phone number, but her phone was taken away by Chen Xinan before she was able to dial the number. Chen Xinan had taken large strides to walk around the car to grab it. Xin Haoyue was mad. Chen Xinan, you bastard! Give me back my phone right now. Chen Xinan ignored her protest. Once she got the phone, he used one arm to block her and used his other hand to type a set of numbers into her phone. As soon as he finished dialing the number in her phone, Xin Haoyue heard his phone ring in the car. Xin Haoyue stopped her futile actions and could only foolishly watch him return to his car to get his phone. When he returned her phone, he added, This is my private phone number. Xin Haoyue's eyes were filled with rage. Why do I need your private number for? Chen Xinan, can you not be so self-righteous and self-assertive? If I'm self-righteous and self-assertive, do you think you would have leisure time during these past 2 years? Chen Xinan glanced at her after he finished speaking and clenched his teeth. He said, You're heartless. Xin Haoyue wanted to turn her head and just walk away, and she did. But Chen Xinan grabbed her wrist again and pulled her back when she had only walked a couple of steps. Xin Haoyue had a headache and supported her head with her hand. Chen Xinan, don't do this. Let's have a talk and figure everything out. It's not something I can explain. He refused to have a serious conversation with her. After all, he already knew that whatever she will say won't be anything he wanted to hear. You can continue to walk out on me, but I won't be a gentleman where I only grabbed your wrist the next time you walk out on me. Xin Haoyue felt like there was fire burning in her eyes. How was he a gentleman? She didn't see it at all. The two refused to budge. Xin Haoyue, who wasn't in the mood to have a battle of wits and bravery with him, said, President Chen, can you be generous enough to bring me to school? How could it have looked to others when he suddenly told her to come to his apartment? She didn't know when the two of them became familiar with each other. They clearly hadn't spoke once in the past 2 years. Chen Xinan smiled at her. Are you that uncomfortable being with me? Xin Haoyue shrugged her shoulders. I am indeed feeling quite uncomfortable. Let's stop seeing each other from now on. They simply didn't have anything to say. Upon hearing her blunt words, Chen Xinan's face immediately turned gloomy. Xin Haoyue smiled. President Chen, I'm just saying the truth. If you really can't take this, just leave me alone. We can just stop seeing each other. Are you just going to repeat these words? Then why do you keep on torturing me? Chen Xinan, I don't know what you want to do, but I really don't have time to entertain you. Xin Haoyue said indifferently. I'm not interested. Chen Xinan tried to suppress the stormy expression on his face as he asked calmly, What's your reason? What reason? The reason why you're not interested. Xin Haoyue laughed. I need a reason for why I'm not interested. Xin Haoyue, don't think that you can casually dismiss me. I won't let you use the same reasons twice. I will give you time to get used to this. Xin Haoyue was flabbergasted. Was she not speaking the human language? She had no idea how to continue to communicate with him. This person was simply unfathomable. Why must he pester her endlessly? She waved her hands. My head hurts. I don't want to talk to you about this. You should bring me back to school. If not, I'll call a taxi. She said this and was about to leave. Seeing her unwell expression, Chen Xinan knitted his eyebrows. He took a step back and said, "I'll bring you back to rest." Xin Haoyue waved her hand. Her house was quite far from school, and she wouldn't be able to catch up with the rehearsal time had she taken a round trip back home. How would she even have time to rest? "Bring me back to school." Chen Xinan allowed her to have it her way, seeing how persistent she was. When they arrived at school, Xin Haoyue found the 3 other hosts who were discussing the dress rehearsal that they will be having. With Xin Haoyue, there were 2 men and women. That way, the pairs made the division of work convenient. The 3 hosts chosen from the school were quite remarkable. They looked at Xin Haoyue in admiration and shock. One of the rather small and delicate female hosts even asked Xin Haoyue for her signature and requested a photo with her. They discussed for a while before Xin Haoyue concluded their draft. She asked for a laptop and printed out the script she thought of on the way here. In the end, she made a few changes. The initial draft was set, and it was about time for the dress rehearsal. They followed the original workflow. Everyone was shocked by her aura, as Xin Haoyue greeted everyone at the beginning of the event. The 3 hosts secretly admired her inside their hearts. As expected, she was truly a host from the TV station. Her model and ability was different from others. Because of this, the 3 of them gave their best, trying to keep up with Xin Haoyue. The entire workflow of the dress rehearsal was quite successful. They fixed some parts that weren't satisfactory, and Xin Haoyue slightly adjusted the order of the programs appearing on stage so that the entire evening party's programs will flow smoothly. Upon completing her work, Xin Haoyue glanced at the clock and saw it was 4:40 p.m. She was about to call Zhongqin when unexpectedly, Chen Xinan passed through the school corridors and headed for the assembly hall. At this moment, Xin Haoyue, who stood by the assembly hall's door, finally detected something wrong. She looked to the left and to the right, trying to find an escape route when Chen Xinan arrived in front of her. He said in an extremely natural tone, "It's over, I'll drive you back." Xin Haoyue's heart thumped quickly. Not right, not right. There seems to be something wrong. How can Chen Xinan's character setting digress completely from the novels? Why was he acting nervously and wanting to bring her home? Even if he wanted to be a protector, he should be doing that for Sheng Wenyang. Sheng Wenyang. Xin Haoyue, who forgot about Sheng Wenyang's existence due to how busy she was, suddenly remembered her. It's not right. It was now September. According to the original novel's development, Sheng Wenyang should have already returned to the country in brilliance in June. Xin Haoyue suddenly realized that this world was no longer following the path of the original novel. The timeline was in disorder and the character settings had collapsed as well. What will happen next? The ending? Will it change as well? Xin Haoyue couldn't help but blink her eyes at these thoughts. Could it be because she had barged into this world and broke the original path of this world? Xin Haoyue believed in this possibility, the more she thought about it. She thought of another question. Now that the world wasn't developing based on the original book's plot, wouldn't her ability to predict the future no longer be useful? Xin Haoyue couldn't help but facepalm herself. Why did it become like this? Are you that annoyed at seeing me? Huh? Xin Haoyue couldn't help but look up at him when she heard his voice. Chen Xinan looked at her curiously. Xin Haoyue didn't want to be bothered by him. She was about to walk around him and leave when he pulled on her wrist. I'm bringing you to eat. It's not even 5 yet. Xin Haoyue looked up at him in disbelief. Why are they eating right now? It's too early. I'll bring you for a stroll on the way. Xin Haoyue snorted. President Chen, you want to experience the feeling of traffic jam during the rush hour after work? Chen Xinan then realized that his suggestion indeed wasn't sensible enough. Xin Haoyue looked at him in alarm. She was about to leave when she heard someone say in a surprised tone, Oh, my goodness, Chen Xinan. Oh my God, Senior Chen came to school. He's so handsome. I didn't think I could see him in person. Xin Haoyue listened to the group of girls' discussion and thought in disdain. He is quite handsome, but appearance isn't everything, right? She pursed her lips and watched him standing there motionlessly. She thought she wasn't interested in standing here and watching the girls fawn over him. Xin Haoyue turned around and left. Who knew that Chen Xinan had followed her and caught up with his long legs? She sped up her pace, but he still leisurely followed her. Xin Haoyue was indignant. Chen Xinan, what do you want? Why are you following me? I'm beginning to doubt your IQ if you still don't understand it, despite how obvious it is. Xin Haoyue was speechless. It doesn't make sense. She can't communicate properly with him. She calmed down and called Zhongqin, inviting her out for food. She hung up after telling her the time and place. Xin Haoyue said, I'm going out to eat with my best friend. Are you going to follow me still? Chen Xinan pondered deeply about it before he said, Call me once you're done. I'll come and pick you up. Xin Haoyue was speechless. Did his soul travel through time as well? He wasn't the Chen Xinan from the book at all. Who are you? Xin Haoyue asked sternly. Chen Xinan thought this question was strange, but he asked in reply, How about you? Then who are you? Xin Haoyue stared at his eyes and felt the brilliant eyes flickering, full of playfulness. She suddenly shivered and felt like he had noticed something. She pondered about it before she replied vaguely, Who do you think I am? Chen Xinan directly responded, "You should ask yourself that question. Am I not Xin Haoyue? Names can just be code names sometimes. There have been many people with the same name and surname since the ancient times. Some looked even identical with each other, though it's rare for someone to have the same voice as another." Chen Xinan observed her sudden pale face and continued to say, "But just because it is rare doesn't mean the possibility doesn't exist." Xin Haoyue was stunned. Her whole mind was thinking, He found out? When did he find out? I don't know what you're talking about." She avoided his eyes and rushed off. Chen Xinan calmly walked behind her and continued to say to himself, "Plastic surgery? It doesn't look like it." "Who'd you say had plastic surgery?" Xin Haoyue retorted without hesitation. "Not plastic surgery? Do you have a twin then?" "Ha, President Chen, you have a creative imagination. Then what about your voice? Why is it exactly the same?" "No, it's not exactly the same. The person talking before had a very unpleasant voice. Your tone and expressions are different from hers as well." Xin Haoyue secretly thought, if the original host knew that Chen Xinan had actually paid attention to her in the past, unlike her belief that he hadn't, would she feel slightly comforted? Xin Haoyue believed that she was overthinking this. She was unwilling to answer, but Chen Xinan continued to close in on her. "What? Is there an unspeakable secret?" Xin Haoyue didn't even look at him. She said, "You can think whatever you want. Then you just need to answer one question. You're not her, right? Is it important to know whether I'm her or not?" Xin Haoyue reminded, "Chen Xinan, don't waste your time on me, and don't waste my time either. Life is so boring. If I don't waste time, how will time pass by?" Xin Haoyue glared harshly at him. She felt like there wasn't enough time to use every day. Yet, he was managing 2 big companies and he dared to say that he wanted to kill time because he was bored. Xin Haoyue sighed. He was indeed the male lead. He was probably the son of the author, which is why the villainess is looked upon worthlessly. She finally got rid of Chen Xinan and went to meet up with Zhongqin. Zhongqin's first sentence was, "I saw you coming out from the black car for a second. If I remember correctly, the car was a bit familiar." Xin Haoyue pulled out a seat and sat down. She said weakly and without strength, "What do you want to say? Cut straight to the chase." Zhongqin stretched her body halfway over the table and smiled flatteringly. "Did Senior Chen bring you over?" Xin Haoyue stared at her, not blinking at all. Zhongqin automatically received the answer. She excitedly said, "Oh, you've grown up. Xin Haoyue, explain honestly. What's your relationship with Chen Xinan? When did this happen?" Xin Haoyue felt helpless. "On the contrary, I want to know if Chen Xinan had been provoked in the past 2 years in any way. He's acting so abnormal, completely unlike himself." Xin Haoyue clearly didn't place Chen Xinan's words in her heart after seeing Zhongqin. When she returned to Xin family, she couldn't help but be touched by how Bai Ning prepared the table of gourmet food in high spirits for her. Aunt Chen helped carry the cooked dishes over to the table as she smiled splendidly at Xin Haoyue. She said, "Madam knows that you will be home tonight and had been pondering over what dishes she should prepare for you since earlier this afternoon. She had been trying out different things in the kitchen since a long time ago. Young miss, all these dishes are personally cooked by Madam." When Bai Ning heard that her daughter was back, she wiped her hands and walked out from the kitchen. She smiled, then said, "Are you tired? If you are, you can go up and rest for a while." Xin Haoyue couldn't help but hug Bai Ning after seeing her. She grinned, then responded, "Mom, how can we finish all the food you cooked later on?" It's okay. It's because you seldom come home." Xin Haoyue felt even more ashamed after hearing this. Because of her studies and work, she rarely came home. Xin Haoyue smiled sweetly and grabbed onto Bai Ning's arms. She said, "Mom, how about I find time to come home frequently in the future?" "Silly child, that would be great." Xin Haoyue looked at her smiling face and believed she definitely needed to return home more often. At night, when the whole family was happily eating, Xin Haoyue's phone rang. She hurriedly ran over to the sofa where she had left her phone and answered it after a couple rings. "Hello. Where are you?" "At home," Xin Haoyue answered subconsciously. Then she realized that who else would the deep voice belong to if it wasn't Chen Xinan? She hurriedly moved the phone away from her ears to look at the screen. It was a bunch of unfamiliar digits. Xin Haoyue recalled him taking her own phone to call himself. She looked serious and asked, "Is there a matter?" "It's good that you arrived home safely." "You?" Xin Haoyue didn't even get to continue her words when Chen Xinan said, "Rest well." He hung up right after. Xin Haoyue glanced at her phone, which displayed, "Call ended." She was unable to comprehend what happened. What was he doing? Did he call just to confirm her safety? Xin Haoyue felt that this was becoming more and more unrealistic. Xin Chancheng watched as she stared blankly at her phone and asked, "Who called? Is there an urgent matter?" "The food is getting cold." Xin Haoyue hurriedly answered, "Nothing. I'll be coming." She decided to just stop thinking about Chen Xinan. It was rare for Xin Haoyue was on vacation. After her nap, she woke up to shop a bit with Bai Ning. When that ended, she went straight to school. The school was bustling with people during the anniversary of the founding of the school. Besides the students who passed by and forth, there were numerous senior brothers and sisters returning back to the alma mater. The atmosphere around school was pretty good. After Xin Haoyue strolled for a bit, She was nagged by a few junior sisters. They said that they recognized her as a city's TV station's host. They had a lively discussion talking about how much they liked and admired her. After that, they wanted to take pictures and get her signatures. Xin Haoyue was amiable and approachable, so she satisfied each one of them. When she signed her name for the last person, she got ready to leave. A girl with round glasses asked shyly, "Senior Sister Xin, I am from the reporters department in school. I really enjoyed your hosting in various programs, so I want to interview and write a report on you." "Senior Sister Xin, is it okay?" Xin Haoyue pondered over it and replied, "It's not like you can't." The group of girls were slightly excited, and the girl wearing round glasses was in high spirits. "So Senior Sister Xin agrees?" "It's not really a problem. The main point is that I'm short on time. I have something else later on, and after I'm done, I will be flying straight back to a city tonight. How about this? Give me your number, and when I have time, I will set an appointment with you." Sure. Thanks, Senior Sister."